several years now. And so let's go back to May of 2022, when the city council adopted a climate action plan. And they made a goal to.
Hold on a second. I just started the recording and it says to let everyone know they're being recorded, so I just started.
Yeah, good reminder.
Yeah.
So the city council adopted the climate action plan in May of 2022. And the goal was to get not just the cities, but the entire community's greenhouse gas emissions down by 2030, down to 50% by 2035, and down 100% by 2050. And again, let me just repeat, that was not just the city operations, but all of the community. And so that's quite a big effort if you think about it, trying to get people to change to solar, switch from natural gas to electric, go to heat pumps, and all the other things that our public needs to get our greenhouse gas emissions down. And we knew it was going to take a lot of infrastructure investment on our part, but also a lot of community outreach and engagement. And worked with Richard Sawyer and others and ran a lot of numbers. And we said, hey, city council, if you really want to reach this goal and be in the driver's seat and make it happen, then it's probably going to cost about like $1.5 million a year to do this. And you probably have to go to the voters for like a levy lid lift or something to do that, to fully pay that price tag. If you really want to achieve this goal, it's probably gonna be about 1.5 million a year. And so when I presented the budget to them that fall of 2022, they said, Rob, we appreciate that. Thank you for offering such an aggressive plan. But before we jump to that conclusion, why don't you look at partnerships out there that you can leverage, or grants out there that you can take advantage of outside of the city, before we just automatically conclude that the city's got to foot the whole bill. And so we said, fair enough, but this still is enough work that we need some budget for this. We need additional resources. So kind of through some negotiation with the council, we said, let's at least bring on a new position, a climate action plan program manager, to report to Richard in environmental science services. Sorry, my daughter's an environmental science major. And excuse me. And we also need that position also needs some resources to go with it too. And by the way, the budget is already tight, and so if we want to add this program, then we need to find some revenue sources for that. And at the same time, we're also seeing better need for coordination of human services in our city, and especially connecting it to housing and all the work around that. So we also said, City Council, not only do we need a climate action plan manager, but we also need a human services manager, like we're seeing other cities around us create. And we think that there's a need for that as well, and a budget to go with that. And by the way, since we've been adding some new positions lately, we've now triggered it to the level that we need additional help in administration. So we also need, if you want to add these two positions that kind of cause us to have those additional administrative costs, we need a new person in finance. So we proposed 3 new positions, and we proposed 3 new taxing sources to fund those 3 positions and programs. And does anybody know what those new revenue sources were? They were
The lights, we track it.
good guess, but no, yeah. No, that's part of the old financial sustainability for the 2020. Good, I'll tell you the answer. So when it came to a garbage utility tax, we were low compared to other cities. Ours was 0. Yeah. And we saw other cities ranging from about 6% to 10%. So we proposed a brand new garbage utility tax. Doubling the vehicle license fee from $20 to $40. And increasing natural gas utility tax from 4% to 6%. So state law puts a max on how much you can charge on utility tax. And 6% is that max. So we were below what we were allowed to charge for use for natural gas. So natural gas, garbage, vehicle license fee. And you might say, wait, hold on a second. Vehicle license fee, shouldn't that go to pay for transportation? Yes, by state law, that needs to go pay for transportation. But what it did is by sending it to the street fund, it then thereby reduced the general fund subsidy to the street fund and freed that money up to pay for those programs. And so while we were having this conversation with the council and the community about the climate action plan, and this proposed package, we heard a little bit of opposition, but we are hearing more voices say we weren't going far enough on climate and that we should have been funding the full thing. In fact, the night that the council adopted those 3 tax increases in one night, and this was after a ton of shouting it from the rooftops and trying to let the public know that this was happening. At that February 13th city council, and this is to the best of my recollection, you can go and watch the tape and tell me if I'm wrong or not, but what I remember is nobody spoke against those 3 tax increases. And we had several people say that the council wasn't going far enough, which blew me away. And then those taxes got implemented throughout its stages in 2023. So here's the presentation we gave to the city council that night. I'll just go through it really quickly. So we reminded them of their 2 goals, keep going. And talk about climate change. Next line.
Oops, sorry. Trying to just scroll down, but anyway, sorry.
Yeah, so we're reminding them about the why they want us to do this. And then also the need for housing and human services. Keep going. Keep going. So here's our approach was to hire staff, but then look for partnerships and grants and set up stages with clear goals. And go. Keep going, next slide. So here's the body of work that we have proposed for the human services manager. And some tasks that they want to work on. Next slide. And then these are the costs that we're gonna go with it. Next slide. And then that administrative support cost I mentioned. And then this was at a very summary level, the costs associated with that and the funding sources. So this is kind of the punchline slide. So you can see.
Sorry.
Yeah, so you can see the cost for each program. And it was less in 2023 because it was a partial year. This, remember, it was February of 2023 the council approved this. And you can see those funding sources. So, next slide. And then this just highlights the funding sources. This was a comparison of the different tax rates. So you can see on natural gas, with the exception of Woodinville, we were below the 6. Everybody else was at 6. You can see the garbage utility rates ranging from 4% to 10%. Then we said this was what it would cost the typical household. And if you wanted to know, how did we come up with the typical household? I used my house. I have a 2,200 square foot house with natural gas heater, stove. What else? Pretty much everything that you can have, natural gas. I own a water heater. So, yeah, so, and I have, at the time I owned 4 vehicles, I'm ashamed to say. But now I'm down to 2, I think, because kids have left the house and one kid wrecked his car. I'm not buying another car. So anyway, but that's the monthly total cost each resident. And talk about the effective date of these new funding sources. And talk about equity considerations, meaning, like, okay, if we raise these fees on folks, what about lower income folks? How's the regressivity of these increases gonna play out? And so if you go back, that's. So we talked about some possible relief options for folks that were going to be impacted, that from an equity standpoint. Next slide. Yeah, and so we talked about prior council discussions. This was again the night of February 13th. And slide. And then we talked about all the ways we advertised it and tried to get the word out about it, because we didn't want this to be a surprise. And then those were the actions for that evening. So they, number one, authorized the additional expenditures, and then the 3 tax increases that they were asked to do that night. And they did it all in one fell swoop that night. So that is kind of the story. And so right after that night, we went and started recruiting for the climate action plan manager and the housing and human services manager. And we struck it rich. We hired a couple of really good people. One of them is in the room. There's Tammy right there. So Tammy's got a wealth of experience, especially in the human services area. And I'm proud to report we stole her from Mercer Island. I like stealing from Mercer Island. We've done it a few times. And then Nina Rasmussen, I don't think she's been to one of these meetings yet. Yeah. She's our climate action program manager, and she's doing a great job. She just hit the jackpot this last week and got us a bunch of grant money for EV charging stations throughout the city. So she was part of a Department of Commerce grant, and she partnered with King County on it, and things like that. So we're those 2 positions are producing what the city council asked for them, and they're a dream come true. So we're really lucky to have them. And then that finance position, what happened is Carla got promoted into that finance manager role, and then we went and recruited for her replacement. So, yeah.
I didn't have to.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's that's kind of the story of that latest kind of change to the budget. And so this package I just described did not get in the original biennium budget, the 2023-2024 budget. That got adopted in the fall of 2022. And so council made these changes, and then they subsequently did a budget amendment to incorporate these changes into the budget. So any questions on that story? Was it an exciting story?
Yeah.
What we see there are the projects or project adjacent.
The details. The detail page.
Oh, yeah, so that's more details there, and it's also in your packet, it's shown as a link in your packet.
Okay.
You can go into these details. When I say packet, the link on the agenda.
Yeah.
One other quick thing before we go to department presentations is now going back to the summer, fall of 2022, we were having some internal issues with aligning staff resources with workload demand. We were growing as a city. We were seeing an increase in our workload, especially in areas like new park acreage that we're bringing on, new customer service requests, more demands from our residents for information, things like that. So we tried to right size our organization and match the staffing with the workload. And I talked about that in the city manager's budget letter that's in the adopted biennium budget. And what I did is I made copies for you of the pages that provides the justification for those new positions. So you guys can take this home and read it at your leisure. There's enough to give Richard a copy too. Okay, that's all.
All right.
Okay, so I can take one.
First up for department presentations, is Brandon done? You ready? You pull yours up.
Let me get my timer. Myself, schedule, just, thank you.
Yeah.
So, I'm Brandon Moen, the police chief in the city of Kenmore. Been with Kenmore for a little over 4 years now in the police chief role. I actually am an employee of King County Sheriff's Office, as the city of Kenmore has contracted with, Kenmore has contracted with King County for police services since the city incorporated in 1998. As you can see, there's several other cities within the county that also contract with the sheriff's office, varying in size from Beauhart's Village, which people don't even know about this, to largest city as Sammamish, is the largest one population. So a number of cities and transit agencies as well as Montgomery Indian Tribe and Golden Field. So there's a number of reasons the Kenmore has contracted with the sheriff's office. It's primarily financial. We save quite a bit of money versus having a standalone police agency, which can be very expensive, not only capital costs perspective, but just a lot of the behind the scenes costs that come with having your own police department. And that'll be in the next slide in a second. But some of the larger factors that come into play in our contract with King County is that King County takes on a lot of the liability, really all of the liability, what is a very high liability profession. So King County is the provider of all the insurance and takes on all that. We have one large contract with the sheriff's office. It's almost all inclusive, includes everything, the employees. I work for King County, my uniform, all the vehicles, all the equipment, everything belongs to King County. It's provided by King County. It's all included in that contract. What we do have, and actually I'll talk about that here in a second, but I don't think I started my timer. I just cheated. 10 minutes. Glad a minute and a half. So we'll talk about some of those other things here in a second, but we still, while we do not have a standalone, our own police department, we certainly give the appearance that we are our own police department. Our officers will all wear Kenmore police patches, our vehicles say Kenmore Police. I am the Kenmore Police Chief, even though I work for King County. I think if you want to ask an average citizen here in Kenmore, they probably don't realize we do not have them. So on the next slide, you see some of the things that are included in the contract. Like I said, uniform, vehicle, radio, all the stuff that we need to have is all included. So if my vehicle breaks down, Kenmore doesn't pay a dime more than they would have already in the contract. King County just replaces it, buys a new. If my computer breaks or it's just due for replacement, King County replaces it. It's all included in the contract.
What I love is that whenever a patrol car gets in an accident, which is rare, I only have to ask one question, and that is anybody hurt?
Yeah.
I don't have to worry about whose fault it was, or what it's gonna cost, or whether insurance, no, just, is anybody hurt? That's all I need to know. It's a beautiful thing.
There's a lot of administrative functions that also are built in that are kind of behind the scenes. If we have an officer that, like we are about to have next year, we're gonna have 2 retirements. We have an officer who's gonna be leaving the department and moving to the other side of the state. I don't have to go out and try to recruit, which is really difficult right now to recruit in our profession. I don't have to do anything. The sheriff's office will give us, but we will actually select from their pool, the officers we're gonna have come work here. So we eliminate all of the headaches that go along with recruiting and training and all of that. Sheriff's office handles all that for us. Along with all the other things you see on there.
And I know I'm adding to your time, but another thing is like, if we have an officer that is not matching our values or not performing well, we can just say, hey, county, switch us out. And we don't have to go through all the discipline issues and all the headaches that go with that. So that's also really nice.
And occasionally that happens, there's just someone's just not the right fit. Or it's also, we have people that come and go. It's maybe a younger officer who's fairly new that they want a little faster pace. Maybe they'll go transfer and work in Deering. A little different environment. Maybe they want to work out in the country. They want to work up by Maple Valley, out chasing cows out of the road, or whatever, they do out there. They have that opportunity, so you can move around. So we have young officers here that are fairly new. We have some officers, one in particular has been here for 21 some odd years, the entire time in Kent. So there's a mix, and yeah, we're on Friday. It's nice being able to move people in and out, either because we want them to, or because they've elected to. Go to the next slide. Thank you. So some of the behind the scenes costs, I'll just highlight a few of them. Office of Law Enforcement Oversight's a civilian police accountability organization, or part of the county's organization. It's internal to King County. That's costs are all built into the contract that King County manages. A lot of the considered headache portions of typical police agencies, negotiating with unions, all of that, all handled by King County. They have labor professionals that handle all of the contracts, all the headaches that come with those. All the legal side of things, just talking to Rob, I as of an hour ago, I've been issued a body cam. The amount of public disclosure requests we get for body cam footage and just normal public records, County handles all of that. It's a large headache, requires a lot of staff. So again, all built into the contract that we have with the sheriff's office. So in terms of our department here, like I said, I'm the police chief. We have 12 patrol officers. If we're fully staffed right now, we're having some people float in and out. So it depends on the month where we're at staffing wise. We have a single detective, has been here for many years. Bobby has 35 years to the department. I think right around 20. She's been with Kenmore specifically. And then we have all the specialty units that are provided in that contract as well. So we pay a small portion of basically our slice of the pie for Marine services, for the Marine unit, major crimes, fire investigation, MAR, which is major accident investigation, and should we need spot team. So we're not paying for each time we use them. We just pay a small, almost like an insurance policy in case we need them. And some cities pay more for some of those services because they use them. SWAT team gets used a lot more in Bury than they do in Kent. Whereas though the Marine unit might pay a little bit more than Bury does the Marine unit because we have Lake, right? But the nice thing is we don't have to have each one of those units. We have access to these specialty units when we need them. So on the off chance that we do have a major incident like a homicide or something like that, we have some of the country's best detectives, most trained and fortunately I get a lot of experience in King County doing these type of cases available to us when you come into Kenmore. We typically have 2 patrol officers working at a time. Sometimes there's more because of shift overlap between swing shift graveyard, in particular. We rely heavily on our agreement with Shoreline. Shoreline also contracts with King County. So I'm the only supervisor in Kenmore. So I'm only here 40 hours a week. So someone has to supervise the officers in my absence. So that is provided with that contract that we have with Shoreline. So on the radio, they're always listening to our officers, the Shoreline sergeants, because we're all following the same policies. We're all the same agency, all working under King County. So that contract with Shoreline is very important to us. We do not have a police station here, so our precinct in Shoreline at Shoreline City Hall is what we use for, say, like DUI processing or holding cell interview rooms and things of that sort. We drive over and use their facility there. So I talked about the kind of big contract that we have, all inclusive, almost all inclusive contract that we have. This, the 2 years at $8.5 million roughly. So we're talking 4.25 per year for all of those things. The liability, the officer, the vehicles, all of a sudden. Then we augment that with some other much smaller amounts, as you can see, that are specific to Kenmore. So Kenmore owned equipment. We do go out and occasionally buy unique equipment specifically for Kenmore. That's not provided in our contract. It's few and far between, but there is that stuff. In addition to funding we have for special events that we put on, find out things of that sort. We need funds specifically for the city. This is just, I want to give you an idea of some of the special programs that we have. One thing I want to highlight in particular is the automated photo enforcement. So that is an engineering program that we, at this point, do a lot for. Engineering and Tobin really set that program up, got it rolling, did all of the legwork to make it happen. Now we are reviewing each one of those violations as they come in. An officer has to review the video and approve every single one of those. And so that's kind of a unique program that we're able to support the city.
What's the volume of that?
It depends, I guess. I haven't looked at the full year's numbers yet for last year. Tobin's kind of pulling those numbers, but so I don't want to give you a number. And I don't want to say whether it's higher or lower than we expected, but there's a lot of them. Say that. Just based on month ice.
Do you feel like it's a trade-off of man hours, like time that you would have spent patrolling those areas?
So we're just doing it on straight time. We're not using any extra overtime or anything to review them. The way I look at it is that is time that the officer may be out doing traffic enforcement, so they're just doing it virtually versus stopping vehicles. I can approve one of those violations online in 10 seconds. Whereas if I stop someone and write the ticket, I have to do all the, it's gonna be 15 plus minutes. So time wise, it's certainly better to do it virtually.
Yeah, makes sense.
So, with the automated enforcement, basically, when you look at those cameras, you're making sure that the lights are flashing, right?
Yes.
So does it actually take the highly trained officer to do that, or could that be?
State law requires that police officer do it right now. There's word potentially in future that a civilian could possibly do that. But right now it's as a police officer reviewing each one of those. I mean, it doesn't require any skill. You just literally watch your video and yes, it's flashing. You have to match the license plate, make sure that matches to what the vehicle description, department licensing says it should be.
Uh-huh.
More or less it. Pretty simple.
Then you're also picking up stolen vehicles with the license plate.
If they don't match, yeah. Normally the technology is great. The computer will actually recognize if there is a mismatch. So we typically don't even see those. They pull those out already. And they'll say that's supposed to be a Ford F-150 and that's on a minivan. And so computer can figure that out.
Mhm.
Pretty impressive to him. Let's see, what was? I'll just gloss over this really quick because I'm over my time. This is actually not on our budget, but I just wanted to bring up the fact that we work closely with Racer. Just spoke to a couple of our crisis responders a while ago. Meeting, so this is where a mental health professional is available to officers, they're riding with them or conducting follow-up so that the officers have someone trained in that specialty available to them. So city council invested heavily in this program in the last budget, which made our involvement in Racer possible along with the 5 cities. And we're really combining, again, we're paying for our slice of pie of Racer, which makes it possible because we wouldn't necessarily be able to afford or justify having a full-time person here, mental health professional here for us, but because we're sharing this whole team, we're able to afford it.
And this biennium budget is the first budget where we're actually chipping in dollars to help pay for Racer. Before, it did exist as a program, but was funded through a county grant and was much smaller. But by these 5 cities all chipping in general fund dollars, we were able to get full 7-day a week coverage of these mental health providers to co-respond with cops. And lost my train of thought. Go ahead.
So I briefly wanted to touch on some of the other large items within the public safety portion of the budget. We contract with SCORE for jail services. SCORE is a facility down in Des Moines, right on the border from Des Moines and SeaTac. Fairly new facility. It's in the past we've booked in other places. There's a lot of jurisdictions, including Shoreline, that also books into SCORE. For us, it's a bit of a drive to get down there, but it's offset by cost and the benefits of several of the minor things that they do. Like, for instance, video court with Shoreline District Court, where we contract with. So rather than that, we used to have to go down and transport prisoners from the jail all the way up to the court, have their court appearance, and then drive them all the way back down there. They're able to do it all via video, right? And so it saves us, you have to drive people down when we're first booking them, but there's other trade-offs where SCORE is really good about helping us out, and they treat us really well. We're really happy with that contract.
And Chief has been watching this contract really closely, and he's saved us a lot of money on it. And that was actually one of the recommendations of the first FSP was trying to look into ways to save on jail costs. And one of the things we were doing is we were paying for minimum guaranteed beds. Like they're always holding so many beds for us that we could have guaranteed. The Chief was watching the numbers and said, we don't need to be paying for that much guaranteed beds. And so we got that number way down. One of the things that helped is arrests are way down. And there's a bunch of reasons for that. Crime is still down too. But because arrests were down, we were booking less people and we didn't have to pay as much in jail costs. But thanks to Chief for getting those numbers down.
And are they right sized now, do you think?
Yeah, I think we kind of found a sweet spot of essentially prepaying for beds at that guaranteed rates. You're buying it at a lower rate. And then you pay a higher rate if you go over your allotment, you're prepaid for. So kind of find that sweet spot, and then we're doing really well. I just looked at 2023's numbers and we're well under what we budgeted, so doing pretty well. Some of the other things we contract with in the public safety sector, everything is through the Shoreline District Court, which is King County Courthouse in Shoreline on their Meridian. We have our judge that is on Wednesdays now that handles all the 10 more related cases. Giving down to the prosecutor, public defense, both in contracts with private firms that handle both those. The prosecutor not only handles criminal cases, but also assists with infractions, speeding tickets and things of that sort that may get challenged. Also some things Sarah helps to help with. So we can be in constant contact with Sarah on those cases. And skipping back up, we are now part of community court with City of Shoreline. We partner with them and King County District Court on the community court program. Maybe talked about in another presentation, I'm not sure, but that's our second year, I believe, community court. So it's a nice offshoot of traditional court where we are able, the prosecutor is able to divert certain cases with certain people that are eligible to community court where they handle things a little bit differently. It's a different environment. It's not at the courthouse, it's actually at Shoreline City Hall and their council chambers. It's a very unique experience. If you ever have a chance to go to it, it's interesting to sit in on Tuesday afternoon and listen to how they adjudicate the cases and wow. And we covered all that. I got to the end. I'm well over my time. I'm into my question time, so I guess that's.
Exactly.
It seems super streamlined. Do you think there are other synergies with potentially City of Shoreline that I know seems to be a preferred partner? Are there other synergies that we aren't leveraging at the moment, in your opinion?
From a police perspective, no. I certainly can't speak to other departments, but
No, just.
yeah, from police perspective, we are essentially the same. I'm like, we work that closely with, that's where I just was at for training a little while ago. That's actually where I worked prior to coming here. I was assigned to Shoreline. Officers will regularly work overtime back and forth. So you may see a Shoreline police car. You could see it, you could see a Gearing police car out here working overtime at some point. It's just it's another benefit of the contracting, so we're able to borrow those officers. Live officers.
What areas would you consider like the variable costs? Like which of the costs, if can you go back maybe a slide or two? Like, you know, like I'm looking at the prosecutor costs of 300,000, or I'm looking at some, we talked about the score facility and that, you know, we can determine how many beds. But which of these costs are sort of like, we have a little bit of choice in how much we're, you know, prosecuting and therefore incurring prosecution costs and those kinds of things.
So if you go to the previous slide of these costs, one more.
Other way?
There we go, that's the one.
Mhm.
So the big contracts, obviously the police contract is the biggest one, and that's where we see the most jumps typically. And we had a big jump this past year due to primarily large increases in labor costs and liability insurance. Liability for policing around the country just costs through the roof, which bothered contracting as well. So that's where you see the most movement. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of flexibility from our end. The county essentially says this is what it costs. And there's some things we can tweak, but not a lot.
One thing we could tweak, but I don't recommend it, is we have 14 officers assigned to the city, which gets us 1 detective and 2 officer minimum coverage 24/7. And if you look at per capita officers per capita, we are among the lowest in the states. We're second lowest in King County, second only to Sammamish. And so I wouldn't recommend, like, we could say, you know what, we're gonna do 2 officer minimum staffing except for on Sundays and Mondays. And I know you're just like cringing right now. So that could save us some money, but you really need 2 cops in a town like this. You need them to back each other up, or when one transports down to score, you still need a cop here. And so I'm pretty firm on 2 officer minimum staffing. And chief.
Oh, yeah, it wouldn't even be a topic of discussion. I think the county would probably say, just from an officer safety perspective, the fact that they said we're the second lowest in King County, we were the 3rd lowest in the state of Washington per capita for policing and for city. So Yeah, not, that is where there's flexibility. You could always say, yes, we can take on less FTEs, but from a public safety perspective.
Just as a side note, I think it's fascinating that there isn't a correlation between how many cops you have and your crime rate. You'd think, oh, we're lowest per capita in the state or third lowest, we must have a lot of crime. No, we're one of the safest cities around.
So just as a point of comparison, so like Lake Forest Park seems to have their own police department. It's like, so, and we compared like how much they're spending and how that's costing, and I mean, like, why, we seem to be very similar, but we're so much different.
I have.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess that is one possible area where we might be able to save money is we could do a study like was done in 2011. We could say, okay, contracting for police with King County, are there less expensive options? Could we contract, could we stop our contract with King County and contract with Lake Forest Park or Kirkland or Bothell? Would that save us any money? Or should we form our own police department? Would that save money? Those are questions that I don't know the answers to. It would take a ton of work and a big consultant's fee to find the answers to those questions, but the last time we did that study and explored that was in 2011, which was right before I came on board. So,
What did it
and,
tell you then?
Back then, it said that we're saving about $1 million a year by contracting with King County. That was back then.
Broadly speaking, is there any hybrid approach where, you know, like we wouldn't get a Marine unit or SWAT teams in Kenmore, right? But we would maybe want to be able to get those types of services. I'm thinking about insurance. If we are a low crime rate and low incident level, Kenmore might be willing to take on that risk and have a lower premium or that kind of thing, and compared to Burien, which may have a higher incident rate. And so like, is there any kind of hybrid like partnering that we could do with King County where we take on the officers and the capital, the cars and equipment and all that kind of stuff, but we still have that strong relationship to get those other services? Or
So,
and it can be a simple, like, this is way too complicated.
Yeah.
That's not an easy answer, but
it's ultimately a question for King County and their willingness to do that. So, because that impacts all the other contracts. So if we're saying we have the cost of, to the SWAT team, for instance, and we're dividing up that cost between unincorporated King County, Burien, Sea-Tax, Mamish, Hobart's Village, you know, and all these contracts, if we say to pull out of that, the SWAT team portion of that, say we're gonna save that at $10,000 by not contributing to that, saying we don't want those services, we don't want that insurance, increase the cost for all the other cities, and there's less, you know, less cities paying for the pie. So King County's willingness to allow us to kind of piecemeal each of those specialties, I think.
so I think maybe I miscommunicated. What I'm saying is like taking the bulk of police services, the officers and the equipment. We don't want to have a SWAT team here, so we would want access to King County SWAT team. But it sounds like there aren't any kind of current arrangements with a hybrid contract. It's either all or nothing is what it sounds
That's what I'm
like.
saying, yeah, is that they would be, I'm sure, very reluctant to allow you to pick and choose which specialty units you want to be involved in, because it affects all the other cities in general.
Yeah. So
And in reality, so I think the cost of the SWAT team for us, say, is $10,000 a year. I think it's in that neighborhood. If we have just one SWAT call out here, it pays for itself for that year, because it's all in overtime. It's umpteen number of SWAT team members, the hostile negotiating team that comes out with them as well. Canine, all this stuff comes out, and so it costs.
Do they itemize the contract at all? Like, do they, I guess we could go to the King County total budget and see what they're.
So no, we know exactly what each item are being charged for, because each year it's reevaluated based on how much to use it on the previous.
Okay.
So if Burien had 10 SWAT team call outs the previous year, their cost for the coming year are gonna go up.
Okay.
And then for each of those line items, so we do calculate.
So just to build on that, when we were talking about, you said it's kind of like insurance, you're buying an insurance premium. By the way, my name's Mary, I have my name tag. One of the things that came to mind is there also then like potential, or is that something we lobby for, a credit back when we do well? Like we've done well with crime, we've done well with certain things. So is there maybe an opportunity to get a credit back for doing a great job that you guys are doing? Instead of paying the higher fees for lawsuits and insurance and things like that.
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question.
We do get adjustments to the bill, so like if we're, because they're making estimates when they,
Right.
you know, have
Like
set
insurance.
their rate or whatever for the year. And so if we haven't used certain things that are tangible, then they will make an adjustment. But it's not so much based on what you're saying, like, oh, we did a great job, but it is based on more tangible things. And they'll make an adjustment at the end of the year.
And in a similar context, do you feel that there's preventative measures that might further reduce crime and would therefore in further years potentially reduce the overall bill? That's what I'm saying. Don't
Yeah,
try.
reduce it from, yeah, we want number one.
Well, that's what.
Please, lower.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the whole idea behind Racer, right?
Yeah.
Right, yeah, and it's an investment, an alternative investment. So Racer is kind of a groundbreaking, but unique, well ahead of our times in this area. Started out as a radar in Racer. It's the idea being it reduces calls for service and calls for service, traditional 911 calls, which is actually how a large portion of the contract is calculated, is through dispatch calls for service. And we also use that as one of the parameters that they calculated. So how do we reduce the calls for service and reduce the crime? That's my job to figure out. Unfortunately, you know, it's difficult to do. We're responsive a lot of times, responding reactively to things versus being proactive. It's the nature of policing. Anything else, it also costs more and more money to do. You know, we could have a proactive unit that kind of goes out and addresses the high utilizers of the individual that commit the most crime, say, we know who they are and really target them and try to eliminate that crime or those calls for service, but trade off somebody, more FTEs, so.
Or the
Always
root
try to
cause of the
balance.
problem, the root causes of these problems are societal. We don't belong to the police. The police are adapting to them and addressing them. Yeah, I think for me, when you look at these numbers, you could nickel and dime some of the smaller amounts, but the gains are insignificant, really based on the size of the contract and the cost of the contract, which is not negotiable. Right, at this time.
For the most part, yes, I think that's fair.
It's the same contract as the other 12 cities, so if we tried to amend it, it would have to be for the other 12.
Yeah,
Is it negotiated all together as a whole with the other 11 cities then?
And it was my understanding before, so being on the border here, we might have the option of also contracting with the Homer County Fund. They do the same kind of thing, I assume. But now, from what I've heard, they use a different dispatch system, so that doesn't, is that why?
I think that probably the biggest barrier to contracting Stonewall County is just a different county. I mean, in terms of legal authority, that would probably be an issue. Yeah, I mean, they are.
They cross the border,
Yeah,
yeah.
both counties, and so, I think that the issue with, you know, if Kenmore were to look at other contracting options, whatever agency they were to go with would have to increase their staffing. To go out right now and try to find qualified police officers you actually want working the streets here that are, they're new, to add to their FTEs. It'd be
It's a switching cost.
tough to do in this environment.
Mike, you had your hand raised.
I think you've already answered my question. I was interested in the liability insurance piece. And under the assumption that we have a lower risk in Kenmore versus the rest of King County, are we overpaying a premium versus everybody else? But then again, I'm not sure how open King County would be to slicing and dicing that, or to whoever their their adjuster is that they're working with.
Yeah, and that's something, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think that is a line item. I think that's built into the costs.
Sir, yeah.
Yeah, it's just built into we pay X number of dollars per FTE officer. So I couldn't tell you precisely how much we're paying for our portion of liability insurance. I just know that when a contract went up, that's what they said immediately was the biggest driver was this overarching nationwide increase in liability insurance costs.
This is risk management. And
Yeah.
being a small city, there's probably a threshold of how much risk you really want to take. So this could actually be a good deal on a premium basis. We would probably are paying premium above what our actual risk is, just because we are a less risky city, but
We're the young,
it's a random situation, you know, you could have that, it's like health insurance, you know,
Yeah.
you don't know when the transplant multi-million-dollar case is gonna come your way.
we're the young 22-year
I was
old.
gonna say, we're the single healthy person, we're a married couple with 5 kids, yeah.
So are we ready to move on? Because we have a lot more to get to.
I can just say one more thing about police. There's the intangibles of having a contract with King County. And in my last city, we had an in-house police department that was in Gig Harbor. And that took so much of my bandwidth to manage that police department, personnel issues and the issues with cops and everything. And I don't have that problem here in Kenmore. My time is freed up to do other things.
How about we do others besides, we'll do city manager after the others.
No, just to let you go, like.
Yeah.
Because we're gonna be here. 10 minutes, right?
Yeah.
Okay, you can press the.
Oh, yeah, I can press it.
Yeah,
Okay.
sure.
Hello, I'm Samantha Lee, Development Services Director. And this is our department. So Development Services sounds a little bit like community development, but those are two different departments. You've probably heard from Community Development Department already. So now you'll see how we're a little different. So the Development Services Department regulates land development and construction within the city based on established codes and regulations. We do some minor code updates. We dabble in code updates, but the majority is handled by community development. And we also have code enforcement, which includes resolution and abatement of code violations. So these things together help create a place where people live where they live in Kenmore. On this side here, you'll see kind of the basic functions as permit processing, plan review, inspections, code compliance, and code development. That's the bulk of what we do is permits, right? The permit department. This is our team. So we have 10 employees or 9.125. So that's 8 full-time employees and 2 part-time. We have a senior permit coordinator starting next week, full-time, and we have a part-time permit coordinator. And they do all the processing and they act as the hub for answering all the phone calls. We receive the majority of the phone calls that come into City Hall. Most of them are development services. We have 1 administrative specialist full-time. And then we have a part-time building official, full-time building plans examiner / inspector, full-time planner, full-time construction inspector, which is a little different. He inspects infrastructure for new developments. Whereas the building inspector is reviewing or inspecting all the vertical construction. And we have 1 code compliance officer, Bridget. And then we have a vacant position that we are advertising for right now. So tell all your civil engineer friends to apply. That's been really hard to fill and we have been using consultants and which is really costly to fulfill those essential duties of the engineer. These are some of our performance measures that gives you an idea of the past few years of what permit intake has looked like for land use and construction. So you can see 2023, there's a reduction in both land use and building permits. And construction inspections slightly decreased as well. Code enforcement cases and service requests are going strong. The difference is service requests are more like complaints, whereas cases are like violations and more. Those are more lengthy process. But you can see that we have a lot of the cases closed like within that year. So we had 51 open, 50 closed. That's, you know, Bridget is crazy good at her job. And then public records requests we receive a lot of those. I want to say the majority of public records requests, that's how it feels. A lot of records requests. So that's kind of a glimpse of what we do.
What explains the variability?
Of the records requests?
No, just in general.
Just economy, building economy. When the interest rates changed, we saw changes. I mean, COVID definitely affected things. Also, remember that land use is really driving the construction permits because land use is happening first. And so as those decrease, we're going to see in future years, that building permits are going to decrease even more because that's the pipeline for it.
Is that why you have the part-time employees now, so you could scale back and scale up?
We have a part-time permit coordinator because that position has just always been overwhelmed. It's just a huge body of work. And we've asked for it for years and years, and we finally got a part-timer to help. Okay, expenditures. So over 2 years, about 3.3 million, most of which is salaries, wages, and personnel costs. So that's like 58 and 26, it's like 86%, something like that. The 8% accounts for it says services. So a lot of that is, I mean, I can tell you the bulk of that is the consultant costs. We also have hired consultants occasionally for specialty reviews when we need a biologist to go look at something. We don't have a biologist on staff. Reviews like that. So that's where the services comes in. We also have sometimes a hearing examiner. So if we have appeals, those can get costly. Yeah, other things, maintaining certifications, training, things like that. Those are all covered in services. And then the 7% that you see there in the green is called intergovernmental. So that's like paying for things like mybuildingpermit.com, which is our online permit submittal resource. And that's a part of the eGov partnership where other cities like Bellevue, Kirkland, Bothell, Snohomish County, many are part of mybuildingpermit.com to create a consistent experience for contractors and property owners. So it's a pretty good system. It integrates with ours, and it helped us actually be ready before the pandemic, where all of our permits were online, and a lot of places weren't. We were like, oh, we're fully online, and then, you know, boom, 2020 happened. So. And then the other costs there are the 0% and 1% are very small. Oh, this is the 11%. I was like, what is this? Coming in from the side. Yeah, we're 11% of the general budget. And let's look at the revenue we bring in. So we bring in some money, okay? And I just want to say this 2.3 does not include impact fees, which really, if we could include those, I mean, we would really look like we make a lot, right? So we have parks, transportation, and school impact fees. School goes directly to North Shore School District. And then the others go into very specific funds, but this does not include that. So you can see the bulk of it is 1.8 is the permit fees. So that's building permits essentially. And those are based on project valuation, which is the calculated amount of fair market labor plus materials. And then we have land use applications. Technology fee is it's a 5% fee that applies to development permits. And what that does, that goes to help pay for our online permitting and our permit software. Credit card processing fee, we charge that to the applicant if they decide to pay with a credit card, so that we get that back. And then code enforcement, which this doesn't, we did have a pretty good, we had a big code enforcement fee. I don't know what the year that was, but somebody got charged like $90,000 for tree removal. So that's not in wherever this was captured, but it was there. But that does not happen very often. And that is development services. 8 minutes and 23 seconds.
Okay, go ahead, Mary.
So Samantha, a question, when, on the previous slides, you mentioned that decrease in permits. So am I assuming correctly, decrease in revenue for those upcoming years? So do you have like a forecasting of where you see some lines maybe crossing or thoughts on how we might make that up?
How we might make that up? I'm not sure so what I do is I work with Melinda and I say, here are the big projects that are coming in so that she can kind of help forecast where it's going. But I mean, generally there's a downward trend, right, in development. And we have there are some really big projects that are still going, that are helping us kind of stay afloat. And that's why even though the numbers may look low, we have projects like 25 Degrees condominiums, right? And that's 5 buildings. And they're working on we just issued the second building permit. And the fees for that permit were 1.1 million. That includes the impact fees.
Yeah.
So for us, right, I mean, like, how much should we take out of that? Like at least half, right? More than that. So, but still, that's a big project, that is being phased out. So big projects like that have helped us to stay consistent with revenue, and that's like looking at the future, but generally there's still the downward trend.
Do you target a revenue to expense ratio? Like generally, or do you kind of forecast them separately?
We forecast them separately, but it's part of the biennium budget and working with Melinda on that.
And how often do your permanent fees go up? Is that annually or is that?
It's annually, it's approved by resolution by council.
And what's that percentage based on? Is it just the inflation rates?
Based on the CPI, and then also council sometimes will provide very specific guidance. So like right now, we don't charge permit fees for accessory dwelling units because we really want to encourage that. And so we don't charge for the building permit, plumbing or mechanical for that type of development, just to encourage it. So whereas some of the fees went up, council may say, you know what, let's bring a couple of these down to encourage this type of development.
How does your fee schedule compare to other like communities?
So we haven't done a fee schedule in over 5 years. So we haven't done a comparison in over 5 years. I think just generally is where I've looked at other cities. Our building permits are pretty consistent. It looks like our mechanical permits are high for some reason. But it's a calculated amount based on how much time we're going out and spending on the inspection. So.
Maybe a place where we may want to take a little more look at, particularly as we're looking at the strategic plan for the cities with increasing density. And I'm thinking specifically about impact fees. We're going to put more and more pressure on our parks, all of our city infrastructure as that density increases. And it's not, I would think, a straight line function. If you build more intensity on the same size lot, you're going to use services in a more intense way than you would in the past. So I'm wondering, there's a question at the end of this. How do we set those impact fees? What are those based upon? And do they really reflect the type of density and building that we expect to see in the future? I think this is a place where we probably need to be thinking about how do we counter those increased density related impacts on our city's infrastructure. And this is probably the best and direct place to get those.
So the impact fees there's studies for each of them. So schools, there's a study produced by North Shore School District, and then that has to be adopted by council. Traffic is done, or transportation is done by our engineering department, and then the parks is done by community development. So they have studies for each of these, and then those go to council for consideration and adoption.
So that is a place where we, at least the school piece, that leaves the budget. It doesn't give us any advantage. But particularly for parks and traffic, this is a place where we might want to take a look at what is our projection out here in terms of density for the next 5 years or so. And are we really capturing that cost to the city of that increased density to our impact fees?
School fees, there's like a state formula that's supposed to use, they can't really adjust.
Right, and that is
So-
for our budget, so.
Right, but is there like a state formula for the park fees and or do we really have control on it?
I'm not sure about those studies.
Yeah, Department of Transportation.
We have control over them, but they're still,
Yeah, and we do have to follow a formula, and it's based on how much growth we expect to see, number of units, and then how much growth-related infrastructure we need to build based on those growth projections. I mean, just do the math and come out with a fee per unit. One thing to note about impact fees is they don't help the general fund at all. They have to go straight to transportation capital or parks capital. And when you use them to build more infrastructure, you gotta find somewhere to maintain that new infrastructure that you're building with those impact fees.
And is it true, does the RCW dictate that you can't use it to correct deficiencies in your system? It has to be for new stuff, right?
Good.
Yeah.
Sort of library impact fees.
Probably.
Yeah, it has to be for growth related impacts.
Are you expecting or forecasting, you talked about forecast before, are you expecting a kind of stable situation potentially tied to land use saturation or equivalent?
I mean, we're pretty built out as is. We don't have a lot of larger projects unless they're, I mean, the Murphy's auction, that's a big project, but we don't have single family residential, like large subdivisions anymore. A lot of it is combining properties, and then it was townhomes. Well, their townhomes are still going really strong, but we're looking at that density to increase density from now, not just townhomes, but builders who wouldn't build apartments before are now building apartments. So it's changing.
Two questions. One is is your department, I'm sure that this is a joint effort, but who sort of assesses the incremental property value that would then go to the tax base?
King County.
Yeah, it's a King County
Yeah.
assessor.
Okay,
Yeah,
So-
so we provide the information to them, and then they base that based on like where a project is, how built out it is, and then they have different regions within the city that they do occasional updates, based on a schedule.
but presumably there's a forecast with your existing projects of how much
Oh,
the existing projects will contribute to the assessed value, right?
I don't have that.
Yeah.
And I don't know that we get that from King County because we send them when we issue permits. Right, so ones that are in the pipeline, they don't know yet, we don't have that, but I mean, we have it, they don't.
Right, but from a forecast, like when we're talking
Right.
about the lines crossing and we're talking
Mhm.
about how much property tax we can collect on all of this stuff
Good estimate.
2 years from now or 3 years from now, are we estimating that increase based on existing projects and pipeline projects, or is it
It's a
immaterial?
little crystal
Yeah,
ball-y, isn't it?
So less than 1%.
Yeah.
Increase in tax. So we've been collecting about we've been getting about a 1.8% increase in property tax collected over the years. And 1% is the 1% we're allowed to take for state law. The other 0.8% or so is from new construction.
Got it, so you're just kind of
Right.
forecasting an extra 0.8%.
Exactly, we're not looking at.
You're not looking at specific projects, got it, okay. And then the other question I had was, does your department, are you only receiving, or do you do any outreach about potential projects?
Outreach to,
Potential developers saying, hey, you know, like come buy this land or like, is there any outreach
Some
to
ideas.
encourage development?
We don't do outreach in that way. We rely a lot on our comprehensive plan and zoning. The way that we reach developers is through the pre-application process. And so with that, the first one is free. If you need multiple, then we charge after that, but it's a pretty robust review where someone can come in just for feasibility. And then once we have that conversation going, and sometimes it's with the property owner, right? We'll have the property owner sending us people that have questions on properties. We do more of that, but the interest is usually coming just from the property owner or a developer with questions, and then we go from there.
Is that something that maybe we could explore? Yeah, I'm just thinking about like if there's a lull in, if there's a decrease in the number of land use applications and these applications, you may have some time among your existing staff, and rather than cut hours or something like that, you know, come up with something that says, you know, like, can we start reaching out to landowners that have, you know, land in certain areas and reach out about potential developments? And
Sometimes builders will reach out and ask, right, we want to do a records request for the pre-apps that you've had, or they'll use our GIS mapping, right, to look at properties for feasibility. But we haven't done any outreach. I'm not too worried about us not having enough to do because we're already like, so we have so much that it just feels like a lot. But yeah, economic development has typically been in city manager's office, but we're working with developers as we know that there's interest, or as a property is for sale maybe, but not a very active role.
I was actually gonna maybe tie to something you might be more likely to answer, which is if we're mostly built out as a town, but we have this piece of land over here, the Lake Point project or something like that, is that something for this group to look at to help recommend potentially revenue sources by the development of one of the only remaining pieces of property, which is been shelved since when? 2015.
Yeah, it depends on what developer you're talking about.
Just curious about that, because there isn't much residential, standard residential left, but there is some big pieces of land that are nearby that might be meaningful to recommend for revenue.
If you look at
Or
the city of Shoreline's financial sustainability plan that they did in 2014, economic development was a component of their FSP.
Yeah, I was thinking along those same lines, is that, we know like existing businesses, some of them were able to collect, like basically like on maybe square footage basis. We get more in sales tax out of certain businesses than maybe others. So do we ever like target, like, we like those businesses that are gonna basically bring us in money for the long term? Do we target those to come into the city versus somebody that we're not gonna get a lot of money from?
I can sort of answer that. The city councils over the years have not taken that approach when it comes to land use. That's what we call it, the chasing cash registers approach to land use, where there are cities that purposely zone for big box stores to come. The city councils here have made a conscious decision not to try to go after big box stores. Of course, we want more cash registers, but the ones that, you know, the car dealerships and the Walmarts and the big Fred Meyers and all that, those could help our financial situation. But from a policy standpoint, the council wants Kenmore to develop differently than that. Like if we got a Costco in here, oh man.
there's plenty of spots. You
guys would have done your job.
Relax, Rob, it's not gonna happen.
And then we got elevated speed enforcement at the entrance? Yeah.
That's fine.
One of the things that come to mind is there are a number of trends here that are changing, particularly in retail sales and elsewhere, particularly data we've seen recently about the growth in home-based businesses here in Kenmore. This is one of the largest employment sectors now in Kenmore. If you're a home-based business, you are using infrastructure in the city. And we do want to encourage that. It's a good source of job. But are they paying their fair share? If you were a cash register, hardcore, brick and mortar business out here, you'd be out collecting fees. If you're running a potentially equally revenue level business out of your home, what's our fee structure there? Does it exist?
So in terms of permits, we require a home occupation permit, which is free.
Yeah.
So,
Mike, what you might be getting at is, a B and O tax, on businesses. So Forest Park, for example, has a B and O tax. And that gets at that issue. There are, some businesses that pay sales tax and others that don't. And so B and O tax is a way of getting at that. And typically, I think the rate on a B and O tax is, 0.2% of gross revenue. It's up to 0.2% charge. We actually do have a B and O tax in Kenmore. I think we told you this before. And it's on 2 industrial businesses, just so 2 businesses, only 2 businesses. A B and O, and that's about 20 to 30 grand a year that we get.
B&O isn't necessarily personally one of my favorite revenue sources. But I think as we think about how the world is evolving out there and the economy is evolving, we've got to make sure that we're taxing our revenue, that we're advising our revenue sources to match that evolving economy. And if we see something like we have a substantial amount of home business out there, and they're using resources, just like any other business, do we need to be thinking about how do we go after that? How do we get that fair share out of that new revenue sector, out of that new business sector?
Yeah, that was the one thought, but like with all the short-term rentals, like the Airbnb and the VRBOs, do we require them to even get a business license or anything, or?
business licensing is separate, so they would have to get a license through the state and then I think a Kenmore endorsement, but that's a different department. But for permitting, there's no special permit that they have to get to be an Airbnb. That's a hot topic among cities, right? It's how to regulate that. It comes up every so often.
Because they frequently are using more police services, they're bringing people in on our roads.
Yeah, it changes housing affordability, can have impacts.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. We are basically on track for a break right now. Does that sound good to everybody? 10 minutes, the longer meeting. So, yeah, so it is 7:30 on the dot, so 7:40, we will resume with Miss Jennifer. We'll get more soon. I think there's a lot left. Yeah. For tomorrow. Free lunch for everybody. Pause it.
What am I being thankful for today? Thanks for your 10 years. Thanks. No, you thanks. You'll get a couple months. I appreciate that. Oh, I would like this. Yeah, we will be appreciate you and others.
Not exactly without saving it and starting over. Oh, no, no, good. You guys have to get through everything until your flower comes and then can you go? Oh, yeah, I just, I got it from. Let's see. Not trying to out.
Yes, it is. I mean, housing is helpful, right? You know what's in it. So. But obviously, thank you also.
What's happening.
An unexpected medical battle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've been here for
years. And so like, we were there when like, they found the project, approved the project and cleared it up. And so like, we've been cheering and like, I said, so the complete one of each. This cycle was such a 10 years, which is still such a fast. Just felt so. Yeah. That was about we us great. Great. That's the worst thing. Looks like me. This way. That's you. Be that way.
They decided, they decided.
I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, in hindsight, right, we let the,
Question.
let the community.
And then she started responding.
That's the right? So we didn't. Like,
It's also one of those things, we talked about this,
And then.
Is that like, we previously felt like a more unsafe and also focus in a way that allows me to, you know, allow them for like those kinds of policies and values. And so we haven't really felt any to both the lives, right? Like,
Yes.
or we could just both. Exactly. You know, and when they have things like, simplifies, like, you know, there's number one, it's housing, like, oh, so you're gonna vote, because like, you have some. So, but we, this, cruising, you know, it's like, there's the doctors, housing for a while.
Yeah.
They have to wait, separate, it finally hit like 3 years. So. We're in the right, so.
I'm doing pretty well. Fun stuff.
I'm good. I was sitting on it. Waiting for the few minutes, people walking in, and I'm like, oh.
That's why my alarm rang at 6:15, remind me to head up there. I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm already here. How long have you lived in Kenmore?
Go for it, drive.
I think, 2021, probably like August,
Where'd you live from?
Edmonds.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, the Linwood Edmonds, right, by the Meadowdale Beach.
Mhm.
Yeah. And how long have you been? That long?
Hmm. 6, going on 7 years.
Okay.
I moved from Philadelphia here.
Oh,
Oh,
good.
there's a long way.
Mhm. And that's where I was just before for a little while, but started in Kirkland and then moved up. They kind of like most people. Rented in Kirkland and then said I want to buy and said I gotta go north.
Yep. That is true.
I always thought anything post $600,000 would get you like a mansion.
You might get a double wide trailer for that, but you might not.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable here.
2016, I got new waterfront.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Shores,
yeah.
less than that,
Okay.
right there.
You know, it was interesting.
But that was 2016.
Yeah. John,
We bought in 2019
Mhm.
and that was like. We were looking and we snuck into our house. Because like it was, you know, housing prices were going up, and then
Yeah.
that summer. It kind of just started to plateau a little bit. Interest rates were still low,
Mhm.
but it was like people were wondering if there was a bubble.
Mhm.
And so they were just starting to taper off. And so we snuck into our house. They listed it for probably 150 more than what we ended up buying it for.
Oh, wow, that's rare.
And because it was on the market for like a month, and so they had to keep taking it down, and then we came in and made an offer, and they just took it for probably their own reasons
Mhm.
under pressure. And so we just got so lucky. And then the pandemic hit and all of the housing, you know, like shift in that. And so like within a year or two, suddenly, like, there's no way I would be able to afford my house now.
That's right.
I told my son, who's a grown adult. You have to keep it. I mean, you just have to keep it forever.
Yeah.
That's it for me, you
Yeah,
know,
it's-
he lives in
it's-
Arizona, but I'm like, you just have to keep it because you'll never get a good deal like this again. I too got fortunate. Unfortunately, someone passed away in the community that Wood Shores. It's three, if you don't know, it's like three condos right on Lake, Washington next to the Kenmore Air.
Yes,
Okay, right off the golf course. So one building looks at the golf course, the other two buildings look at the lake. And unfortunately, someone passed away. And they, you know, the trust just wanted to sell it. So I was at the right place at the right time. Literally made an offer the very first day.
we bought our house
Just
up
got
near
fortunate.
St. Edward State Park in the
love
lodge. We bought it in 2001 for $230,000.
You kidding me?
What?
See,
And it took every penny we had to get in.
yeah, yeah.
It took every penny we had, like that, we couldn't have bought any higher. And it's just soared since then without any contemplation of
And-
improvements or anything, you know?
I love the lodge. I pick a ball there indoor.
So I got lucky. I got a tour of St. Edward's before renovation, when it was still like a state park, part of the state park thing.
Seminary or something.
And it was beat up and garbage everywhere and nicotine dripping down the walls. It was the coolest. It was definitely urban paving. It was very cool. Yeah. Rats, you know, scurrying along. No, it was awesome. Very.
Yeah, I love what they've done. I think it's pricey, their meals, but. It's
Their
beautiful,
rooms are very small. They're pricey, but they're beautiful.
but they are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
But they seem to be doing
shocked
well.
it's that expensive.
It's really, it's
Even
like
that-
400 a night or more.
Yeah, I thought
isn't
it'd
it?
be more like, you know.
No, there's.
$100.
Yeah, I was thinking even I'd go up to 2.25, but nope,
Yeah.
way
it's
up,
expensive.
way up.
Mhm.
There already.
Ready, yeah. Looks like the committee's all here, so, ready? Okay, yeah, let me try to be lightning fast and start talking.
I think technicals are doing
I'll go over it fast, but feel free to ask any questions. I'm Jennifer Gordon. I'm the Public Operations Director. And I've been with Kenmore since 2008. Things have changed significantly over the time that I've been here. But lots of changes, lots of exciting things, and I've had a lot of fun during that tenure here. This. I don't know if you guys had a chance to go over some of this stuff, some of these numbers yet, but just wanted to highlight our populations at 24, just over 24,000. Kenmore is approximately 6 square miles. We've got 134 roadway lane miles, and we have 7 parks that are 146 plus acres. Operations and maintenance is, of course, in my opinion, one of the most important services the city provides, but in all seriousness, you know, we touch everyone that comes to Kenmore, whether you're a Kenmore resident, whether you go to school in Kenmore, whether you work in Kenmore, or whether you're simply just driving through Kenmore. We touch everybody that is in Kenmore. We work with every department. And so we're just kind of all over the place. A little history, again, I don't know what Rob has said up to this point, but historically, Kenmore has been a contract city, and similar to like the King County contract for police services. The city used to contract with the city of Lake Forest Park for public works services. And it was, when I first came on board, it was myself and I had half an admin assistant, and that was the public works operations department. And so between doing a contract with Lake Forest Park and other government agencies like King County still does a lot of work for us, and other like private vendors and contractors. And we did a public works services analysis back in 2017.
And we attempted to renegotiate the contract with the city of Lake Forest Park. That didn't go so well. They gave us notice in May of 2018 that they let us know that they would no longer be providing service to the city, ending in December of 2018. And so between May and December of 2018, we had to like totally switch gears and develop our department and hire people. And so we started with our own folks starting in January of 2019. I think that we had, although we were kind of leery, we liked contracting. There's a lot of benefits to contracting. One of the negatives is that we just don't have as much local control and really determining who is where and what they're doing, and you just don't have that local control. So, but then you don't have to worry about personnel, and all those things are taken care of under the contract. You don't have to worry about that. So there's give and takes, but I do think that we've seen a huge increase in level of service, and I think that we started our own public works department in-house, and I mean, we haven't really looked back. I think we were pleased how it's all turned out, and I'm really proud of all the folks that we have. We have a great team, and I think that they all really love and enjoy working at Kenmore and working for the community. So with that, I'm going to talk about the 5 kind of different divisions we have in the Public Works Operations Department. First being the parks maintenance services. And so that's all of the, landscape and site maintenance of the parks, restroom building, janitorial services, and, in the parks restrooms, playground inspections and maintenance programs, athletic field at Morelands Park. Both the Parks and Streets teams work supporting all of the city events. So all of the concerts and 4th of July and any other, 25th anniversary, you name it, they're supporting those different events. We also support the volunteer work, developing scopes of work of volunteer projects in the parks. And we also work really closely with the parks project managers and coordinate not only before CIPs are developed and planning stages, but throughout the construction and the transition to maintenance, of course. Then there's the streets and surface water maintenance division. They primarily focus on the just road maintenance, road repair, potholes. We still contract with the King County roads to provide kind of those services that really don't make sense to bring in-house. So something like striping, King County's got the big striping trucks. It doesn't make sense for us to have our own striping trucks. We would use it twice a year and that would be it. So they do those kinds of things, traffic markings, channelization, and they do maintain our street signage, which we have over 2,000 street signs in the city. And so they maintain, install new, repair, etc., all of our street signs. They also provide maintenance and operations to all of our city-owned signals, school zone flashers, the speed radar signs that you see out there, and the rapid rectangular flashing beacons. We also manage all of the right-of-way vegetation and landscape. We do all of the street sweeping. We do have a supplemental contract for additional street sweeping, but we do own our own street sweeping or street sweeper and provide that service. That falls under surface water because really the purpose behind that is not only we want clean streets, but it's keeping all the gunk out of the catch basins and preventing it from going into our surface water and to our water bodies. We also take care of surface water facility maintenance and repair. And so Richard's group in the Environmental Services Department, they're the inspectors. So they inspect all of the surface water facilities And they develop a lot of work that comes out of those inspections that our team then goes and executes. There's other stuff that we can't do, but we do a lot of the, boots on the ground, small facility repairs, and it could be a vault, it could be a pond, it could, be whatever detention facility, those little surface water facilities you see around town that where there might be a pond or overflow or whatever. Provide snow and ice response. So we provide the, around the clock, not only for snow and ice, but all throughout the year. There's always somebody on call, every day around the clock. So we'll get calls for maybe there's an accident on 522 and, big, the gas tanks spills all over the road, and we're the ones that are going to respond and clean all of that stuff up. Or maybe, we have a windstorm and we have a bunch of trees that fall down on the road, my guys are going to be out there cleaning that stuff up. Same goes for transportation projects. So again, CIP coordination, project planning, construction, and then transition to maintenance. Then we've got our facility and fleet maintenance, all of our building sites. So we've got City Hall, the hangar building, of course. We own the senior center, and then there's the boathouse over at Rodin Park. And we also still own the post office, where our old City Hall used to be. Post office is in the front, and the Public Works operations has about 1,400 square feet in the back. That's our Public Works office, that sometimes has about 14 people out of that 1,400 square feet. Then we work together with our different tenants. We've got the Kenmore Senior Center that's out of the North Shore Senior Center. We have the post office, of course, and then Diva Espresso over at the hangar. Different building systems management, some of the stuff we do in-house, a lot of the stuff we do with outside vendors, contractors, HVAC controls, HVAC controls, those kinds of things. So we have a contractor come and do. But we also have a contract for janitorial services for City Hall, the hangar, and the Public Works office. And we provide internal facility support and for folks that use the rooms around City Hall. So any of the internal meetings that happen here, as well as the community that uses the rental spaces here at City Hall. Fleet and equipment maintenance is also part of this division. We use North Shore Utility District up the street for all of our maintenance of our fleet vehicles and under some big equipment. So that's nice and convenient, and they do a good job. Next, we've got our event and volunteer program. So we've got our event supervisor that manages all of our internal city events from planning to execution. They work on sponsorships and marketing. This group's also doing the farmers market, which is something that actually is not currently budgeted in the general fund. It's in strategic opportunities, and the idea this year is that we are very close to signing a contract with the Woodinville Farmers Market nonprofit group that will hopefully be taking over the Kenmore Farmers Market, and it will still look and feel exactly as it does now, still be the Kenmore Farmers Market. It's just the city will be, taking on all the costs to run it. We can have the Adoptive Park and Adopt a Street programs, also individual and group volunteers. And we are managing the incoming community court volunteer. So recreation programs, we don't really have a typical recreation program, so we don't really run our own programs per se in Kenmore. The idea behind it is really getting the word out to the community, different recreational opportunities. We have been working with a couple of different vendors like Skyhawk, Skate Like a Girl, have been running some camps out of Rodin Park and the skate park. And so it's not anything that the city is necessarily putting on. They're just using our sites to be able to provide those to our community. So the supervisor in that department really, or the division manages contracts with those different providers. They're also in charge of the rental, reservations for City Hall, the hangar, and we are going to be starting to, rent out the picnic shelters that we've just recently added to Logboon Park, Morelands Park, and, Lockwood East, along with the Rhododendron Park. That's already currently managed by the senior center. Let's see. Just the rest is department admin. I mean, I could go on, and my list of things that we do is infinite. But I'm not gonna bore you with all the little minor details of those things. Let's talk about the Parks and Facilities Maintenance Fund, or budget, I guess. I think it's confusing. Sorry. The expenditures for the 2-year budget are here, 3.7 million. For the total, mostly, staff salaries and wages, benefits, supplies and services. Don't have a ton on the revenue side here because I'm thinking that Melinda was covering most of the regular, revenue for the general fund, but something to highlight is that we do have, I think it's about 80,000 for a 2-year period for, grants that come in, that we host the residential recycling events. So we do one in the fall and one in the spring, and those are 100% grant funded. We use the funds for a consultant to run those, and it covers all the costs of all of the different, recycling options there. Moving into the street fund, the 2-year expenditure is 3.8 million. Staff, salaries, wages, benefits, a big portion of that. A lot of that is just straight to maintenance and operations. Some capital in there, and then a transfer to the Public Works, Operations Center Fund, which we're not talking about tonight, but
No, and that particular transfer is going away.
Yeah.
We have other sources for it.
yeah. Street fund revenues include fuel tax, let's see, multimodal distribution, investment interest, right-of-way permit fees and inspections, plat signs. So when developer comes in and, puts in a new plat, we actually, get the signage plan, and we actually have King County put the signs in for the development. So they're already in our system and inventoried, and they're meeting our standards. So that's that. Transfer from the general fund, so it's significantly subsidized by the general fund, 1.8 million, and a transfer from the transportation benefit district, 700,000.
That's that.
Yeah, that's.
That's the vehicle license fee, the $40.
And then here is the organizational chart. We've got 17 total staff in the group. And like I said, it was just me and a half of an admin assistant when I first started. So yeah, things have changed quite a bit since I started. It's a little confusing because most of the presentations you hear are talking about a department and then they have a matching budget. I've got a department and I take from different budgets. So I've got street fund, I've got the parks and facilities fund, and I've got stuff coming out of strategic opportunities and surface water. So that's why it's a little bit unique than some of the other presentations you've probably seen. And again, our work is performed by a mixture of in-house folks and external contractors. And that's kind of the end of my presentation. The other thing that I wanted to mention, Sam in her presentation talked about service requests. And I thought I'd just mention this last year in 2023, we had about 1,650
service requests. About 50% of those are operations, so we get the most service requests of any other department, and still doesn't really tell really the story there, because even though a lot of the requests go to engineering for like traffic requests or for surface water, at the end of the day, it's usually operations that has to do something and related to those requests. So it kind of skews it a little bit. So, if you just think about how many days are in the year and how many folks you have and how many service requests come in, adds up pretty quickly. So
Our service requests have doubled since 2010. We used to be about 800 a year. Now we're 1,600. Our population has only gone up by about 15% since 2010. So why the doubling?
people expect a lot more these days.
So, we had that big, bond and we, did a lot of work on building up parks and all. So when things like that happen, does your group come in and say, okay, this is how much it's gonna cost to actually operate them once you're done? And does that all get considered in the process?
Yes, sort of. Yes, I mean, everyone probably knows that I'll get on my soapbox and say, oh, there's all this money for capital and you're gonna build all this great stuff and that's awesome. And then nobody really wants to pay for it to maintain it. They just think that it's gonna be built and it's gonna stay nice forever, and that's not what happens. So, yeah, I think we've made a really, big effort the last 5+ years. Really, when Walkways and Waterways started, a lot more talking about like really what it's gonna take to maintain these additions and, new infrastructure that we're adding. And it's just, it's a lot more part of the conversation now. I wouldn't say that we didn't necessarily get what we really need to realistically take care of things the way I'd like to take care of them, but, I think that, we do the best with what we can, and I'm just thrilled that it's really a part of the conversation. I mean, if you would ask me 20 years ago, no one ever talked about maintenance, and, and it was not even a thought. So, I think we have come a long way over the years, so.
So Jennifer, digging down on that a little bit, on the park maintenance fund, the budget sources for that, how much of that is general fund? How much of that impact fees or other?
So that's just general fund, because impact fees are for new parks. So yeah, we don't get that.
So I think that's something to keep in mind. It's a huge general fund call. But you say, the more we invest in new infrastructure, that doesn't get any smaller, and as time goes on, you have depreciation to keep up. Recapitalize later. So
Yeah, I always say that, you build something and now we have to take care of it forever until it's not there anymore. So, it doesn't go away. And I'll just add also that it's really frustrating working in just the way that the rules are for bidding. We have to bid out to the lowest bidder when we do our capital projects or any really thing that we bid out. So we're stuck with the lowest bidder. And 9 times out of 10, the contractor is not awesome. And, I mean, I've been working in public service since 2000. And, none of the contractors that I've worked on capital projects, except for maybe one, has been really an amazing, awesome contractor. It's rough. You're fighting them, you're fighting, just getting what you think you are promised in the contract, and it's a fight the whole way. And then at the end, they're just wanting to get out of there, and you get to a point where you're just like, okay, we're done here, and we'll take it and we'll figure it out, because it just gets to the point where it's just wasting time and money and effort, and it's frustrating. And so that's just that's not our problem. That's a bigger problem, but it's
When you
frustrating.
say the lowest bidder, that you have to take the lowest bidder?
It's really difficult to not take the lowest bidder,
The lowest qualified.
lowest qualified responsible bidder.
Wow.
So it's up to you to prove that they're not qualified or not responsible.
which is really difficult.
Right.
I've only done it one time in my career, and it was for a maintenance contract that I had worked with that contractor before, and I was able to prove that they weren't responsible, but it's very difficult. Yeah, and it's it's a problem.
The state law, county law, what's the?
State law.
State law, okay.
Yeah, Jennifer, thank you. So I love when you were talking about the service requests. That's the right terminology, increasing even though population increased 10 or 12%, but this has increased over 100. Have you looked into what are they a lot of duplicates? Is it because of not quality work to begin with and a lot of them is fixing? You know, we just drilled down a little bit on.
Yeah,
that.
sure, no problem. So I think the biggest thing is there's so much work. I mean, I also say this, that if nobody ever gave us anything to do, you still have too much work to do. So I mean, it's just there has been over the years working with Lake Forest Park, there was a lot of, buildup of work that just wasn't getting done. And so ever since we started in the house in 19, it's just, we are like trying to catch up to get up to, an even keel of just starting from scratch kind of thing. But also, the problem is we can't be super proactive and we're very reactive. And so you're just playing catch up when you're in a reactive mode. And I'd love to get to a point where we can just be super proactive and get ahead of things before they're a problem. And believe me, we wish that we could. And, we don't love getting calls and people complaining about stuff. We would prefer that.
And a lot of
We're
them
just
double
taking
the
care of it,
right? It's because it hasn't been done, so they're calling again and
Yeah,
you get
I mean,
another count. And
it's not necessary, there's not a lot of duplicate calls because the way that we do it, it's usually under the same request, but yeah.
Rob mentioned, and I thought I saw it on your org chart, that you've got a couple of temporary employees. And there was some hope that maybe, I can't remember which department it was. Was there hope that maybe some of those wouldn't be temporary, that we could extend? Or I guess just looking at your org chart, is there anything that we should?
So we
don't
only, we
understand.
just have one right now, temporary in our department, which is Nicole Suarez. She's the event specialist. She's the one that runs the farmers market. So she's out of strategic opportunities, not in the general fund. I do have other, I've got a couple of part-timers and then we've got a bunch of seasonal workers that come in the summer. But other than that, she's the only like a limited term position that we have.
And as far as the org structure, understanding and hearing what you said, that there's more to do than you have people, but is there anything that you would like point us to as far as your org chart is concerned?
Oh, as far as like where resources, I mean, I think that, in speaking of areas that we could like improve in and level of service and save money. Once we get to the Public Works Operations Center and move into a site that we can actually, actually do our work in is gonna be really helpful. And we can actually start taking some of the services from like King County, like sign maintenance. We can do that. We just don't have the space right now. And we could probably even do that with not adding like people. So I mean, I'm confident there's things that we can take in-house and save money. And right now we're just crunched. I mean, we're on the site over here by Jimmy John's, that's half an acre. And, there's just there's no lay down area. There's a lot of us working in a small area. And so there's just some things we simply don't have the space to do because we're just in that little corner lot right now. And then we're on, 1,400 square feet of, when we have seasonals on board, it's like, it's a little crunched in there, so.
So that's an example of something that could go into your financial sustainability plan is once we move into the Public Works Operations Center, there's some things we could take in-house and actually save money. Sign maintenance is the big one that Jennifer just pointed out. I think,
Maybe,
we can get you that number on what that savings would be.
Yeah.
maybe even at that time, do an overall like evaluation of, okay, what can we
Oh,
do here
absolutely.
now? And then
And that was a conversation when we took the services in-house. I mean, we did look at like what made sense, what didn't make sense. And so, but I did tell Rob that, you know, we can't do all of this because we just don't have the space, and signage was definitely one of those things that just
Yeah.
did not make sense at the time, but I did think there's probably quite a bit of things that we can save money on. But yeah, we just need space to be able to do it. And
But those have been quantified or could be quantified as part of this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you also maintain the, flashing lights for the school zones, is that?
that is through King County contract.
I've been watching all these events happen in California and other parts of Washington with floods and things like that. And you mentioned sort of these emergency services and cleanup and storms like that. Have you given any thought to sort of like the types of 100-year floods and 100-year rainstorms that we anticipate with climate change, and how your department might need to either prep for it or be ready for those kinds of situations?
Yeah, so I'll let Richard's the surface water. But yeah, we are at the bottom of the basin, so everything comes down to us. And we have water coming up in places you will never believe. I mean, there is water everywhere. So we have what's called hotspots. I mean, every time we are going to get a storm coming in, we are looking at all these different places around the city that are known for flooding. And yeah, so a surface water response and surface prevention of flooding, all of that is a huge part of what we do.
Are there capital projects that we could do that would reduce the maintenance and the emergency that?
Yeah.
You keep looking over it.
I know we're not talking, well, Richard's certainly obviously a different part, but you know.
Yes, will be, I think is, some of the models are predicting not necessarily more rain, but fewer but larger high volume storms, which are gonna exceed the capacity of all of our existing systems. So as we're going through and, replacing culverts, we focus a lot on fish patches, but we're also looking at making sure that those can handle these larger storms. And several of those that we've got on our capital improvement program include ones that flood everyone with. And we don't even have, I don't even know if we had a 10-year storm this year. I think people think that these storms are big, and they're actually, the big storms we have are probably 2-year storms that are happening at higher frequency than 2 years. So I think there's really.
We've also already done a lot of projects that have made huge impacts. I mean, Richard's been here. He came a year after I came here, so we've been here for a long time together. And back in the early tens, we were dealing with water everywhere. Flooding. I'm trying to think of a year that it like the last really bad year, but it's nothing like it used to be.
Yeah, 2011 is when we had the snow and then it rained right after that. That was that.
Gosh, yeah.
Yeah, we flooded it. We did.
Yeah.
What impacts do the volunteers have as far as kind of with the new spaces and helping with maintenance? What kind of cost savings or hours do those groups kind of put in?
So the volunteers are hard. We do have a couple of volunteer, events that are helpful, but the big impact is when we can find a group that's really committed to a long-term thing. And so we did have a park stewards program several years ago, but we just couldn't get the commitment. And what was difficult is there was a big group of people that are passionate about getting this, they got a grant and get plants and all this. And I said, that's great, but we're gonna do this work and then we're not gonna have anybody to maintain it. So it's if you wanna do this grant and you wanna do this work, we need commitment from people. We've got a great group with Snow King Watershed working at Wallswell Creek right now, and they're doing some work down off of 175th at Tlacodies. they've been an amazing partner and brought in a ton of volunteers and done a lot of work. So, you know, if we can continue to find groups that are willing to commit long-term to like really, you know, adopting it for real, like not just like, you know, want to do something good, you know, one time or whatever, but if we can get people to really come in and commit to doing that, I think we can do a lot of great stuff.
Give them a certificate.
Hey, we're at 5 minutes on this one. I didn't take that long, did I?
Oh, Deborah,
But not me. Yeah, yeah.
Deborah, I have one more quick question for you.
Yeah, of course.
So with these new picnic shelters, and I know you do the facility rentals, do we really break even on what we're charging for those versus how much it's costing us to come in and clean and maintain and handle the reservation?
Yeah, so right now, the senior center has been managing the Rhododendron Park picnic shelter up to this point, and it was a kind of a deal with them that they handle all the reservations, but they also get all the revenue.
Oh.
I've got, actually working on gathering all that information from the last few years, and so they make about $8,000 to $10,000 a summer. And we're not seeing any of that revenue right now, and we're still cleaning up and doing everything, you know, to support it. So, with adding all the shelters that we have now, I think we can actually, you know, definitely make some money, and to bring in.
And I mean, yeah, it was nice going to the older ladies at the reserve, but I mean, that, we could also even do some of that like an online reservation system now versus.
That's what we're gonna be doing. We're currently working on the implementation, so everything will be online. Picnic shelters, city hall rentals, and the hangar will be like a one-stop shop. Instead of, we've got 3 different systems right now, and it's kind of wonky, and so, yeah, that is gonna be coming up this spring, summer, so. All right, next up, Richard.
Hi, thank you. So I'm Richard Sawyer, and I'm here presenting on behalf of the Environmental Services Division of Public Works. And start my time here. Yeah, so environmental services. So we are kind of one of the 3 legs of Public Works, and I've condensed about 6 pages of a spreadsheet into a few bullet points here to cover our main functions. But so my team manages the city's stormwater utility, as well as the surface waters. And those are different. So, you know, surface water can be our lakes, streams, groundwater. And basically when rain or snowmelt hits the ground and the runoff produced the stormwater. So there are kind of 2 distinct issues that we deal with. And one of the driving factors of, particularly on the stormwater side of things, is we comply with the state NPDES program, which is how the Clean Water Act is implemented nationwide. And so we get a permit about yay thick with hundreds of pages of requirements that we must follow, and it covers everything from operations and maintenance, education and outreach programs we need to follow, responding to spills and illicit discharges, community involvement, and monitoring, sampling. And if we comply with all of the requirements of the permit, each year we submit a report showing that we've complied. That authorizes the city to discharge our stormwater system, so all the catch basins and pipes and ponds. That gives us permission to dump that into the river, the lake, and our streams and wetlands. So that is a very quick overview of the NPDES permit, and you'll hear that acronym a lot, so I just want to make sure I point that out. My team manages the city's surface water management capital improvement program. So these are just a lot of the projects specific to replacing culverts, doing restoration projects at different sites, small works projects, anything surface water related. We implement the city's climate action plan, so I can probably skim over that one. I think Rob did a good job earlier, but so Nina, the climate action program manager, is on my team. And then last but not least, we manage the city's surface water fund, and I'm going to go into that more throughout the presentation. But we're a little unique and fortunate, but we have a specific fund that so we collect revenue from all property owners around the city. They're assessed a fee that's outlined in the city's municipal code as well as state law. But we're allowed to collect a fee to run the stormwater utility and conduct certain surface water related programs that can use those fees. But those fees cannot be used really for much else. So I think to Rob's dismay sometimes, you know, it's, if we're having a bad year, you can't just come and take from the surface water fund to help, you know, fill a gap that we're seeing in parks or something. It has to be something that's directly related to supporting a stormwater utility or surface water management. So just, so that's just something to keep in mind.
If I can just jump in here, so, with the exception of climate action plan, which touches the general fund, everything he's talking about is not your problem. So, the surface water fund is not, part of your assignment. This is just more for context. So the surface water fund is balanced. City council just adjusted those rates last year, last year. And so that's, you guys don't have that problem to solve here. But we wanted him to give the presentation just so you could know what the department does. Now, the climate action plan, that is charged to the check.
And I'll do it.
And we added the revenue source to pay
Yeah.
for that work too, that we talked about earlier, so.
Yeah, so again, yeah, it's very fortunate in that I can, the council will say, here's what we'd like to happen, and I can say, well, here's how I can do that, and here's what it will cost. Will you give me that much money? And then they can say, okay, well, here you go, and then I can go on my way and come back in 4 to 5 years to update that. Real quick, just some metrics on the stormwater utility sides of things. We have a lot of facilities around the city. I won't read all these, but you know, thousands of catch basins where we look in every single one of those city maintained ones every single year during the summer. Miles of pipes to maintain, ditches, lots of the facilities. I think when I came, both the private plus public were a little over 100. And so those grow quite a bit as regulations increase, and just kind of add on to the whole operations and maintenance and rebuilding new capital. Surface water in particular, these facilities are mandated by state law under that Clean Water Act. And once they're built, we have to annually conduct inspections and maintenance. And if, you know, we're running short on time or money, we can't just not do something, you know, I don't have the option to, we can't, you know, we're gonna let the park go this year, maybe in somewhere else. Well, here, I don't really have that ability. So that's also something to keep in mind, is that as these assets and this workload grows, we're actually mandated to continue the same level of service. We can't adjust that. So this is my team, just real quick. So I'm the director and the administrative specialist, and GIS analyst and the climate action program manager. So kind of back to what Rob said is almost 100% true, but I do touch a little bit with the GIS analyst, which was a newer position this last year. It is 33% of her salary and wages be covered through the general fund, but she does provide a lot of services citywide. But fundamentally, she's there because the utility requires us to maintain these assets and operate them through a GIS database. And so that's kind of what got her in the door. But she can provide a lot of services citywide and does so. We've got a senior technician and 2 technicians, and that's really the bulk of our inspections and maintenance and work orders. So as Jen talked about, we go out and kind of inspect. We're involved a lot of times. We work with Samantha's group when they're being developed. So we're kind of involved in that process, make sure they get built right. We work with Jen's team to make sure they're maintained right. And as those facilities grow, the technicians, you know, I was a one-man shop when I started in 2009. And then I got a tech a couple years later, and then every 4 or 5 years, just from all the mandates from the permit, the technician kind of pool grows to manage those. And then with the recently adopted capital projects, the capital improvement program, we really grew the CIP, and so we're getting a capital project manager to help manage those.
If I can point out one thing.
Just last again, in red, I think Jen kind of mentioned this, but directly from the surface water fund, I fund 3 of the FTEs in Jen's group directly, because that's and that workload is again, is just dedicated to specifically for getting all the surface water work done.
And so I wanted to highlight that because remember the slide that showed the thousands of catch basins, hundreds of miles of pipe to maintain, dozens of stormwater ponds and vaults. We've got three people that are actually out there on the ground fixing that stuff.
So the next 4 slides, what I'm gonna do is just bounce real quick. So expenditures from swim, from general fund, and then revenue, swim, general fund. And some of this has been covered, so I can get through this pretty quick, but so it's out of the surface water, just real quick snapshot. You can see salary and wages. Again, that's covering not only my staff, but supporting some operations staff. So operational expenses, again, a lot of consulting contracts. So similar to what Samantha was saying, we don't have a lot of specialty types engineers and things. So if I need a geotechnical engineer to look at something that comes up through a service request or a project, I use contracts to pay for that. And even operational sides, Jim mentioned a sweeper, so like a backer truck, we don't operate, so that's like a big expensive contract, but it's still cheaper than owning our own backer and running our own decant facility. We'll contract that out. So in the summer, if you see the big truck driving around cleaning up catch basins, that's a contract in our operational expenses. Capital expenses, pretty self-explanatory. We're always got each biennium, different projects going on. So this biennium, I think we've got a big culvert project and a couple other small works projects that's covering. And then the last bullet, so as a separate kind of utility for the general fund, Melinda's group actually calculates kind of like, you can consider it like an overhead charge that my team kind of costs and resources to the city. So, we pay, we got to pay Carla to figure out our HR stuff and the accountants to fill out our timesheet and submit those, IT to do our computers. So there's this process and it comes up, this biennium was about $660,000. So that's actually transferred from the surface water fund to the general fund as that overhead charge to help cover those expenses. And then in the revenue side of things, again, Rob had already kind of shown you that breakdown of the utility taxes that we've enacted. So this again is just kind of repeating that to support the climate action program and Nina's position. And then there's the breakdown too, like I said, over 2 years, some of that goes to the GIS support. So that's represented there. In expenditures. So on the revenue side, again, the biggest component is that surface water charge that I mentioned. So every property is assessed a swim fee. We just did another study to figure out what the next 5 years fees are going to look like, and that started this year. A couple other ones are we have a capital facilities charge. So you can almost look at it as like an impact to stormwater. So when new projects come in and build something, it's like kind of paying to connect to our system that's already there, that everyone else has kind of already paid their share of, so they kind of join in and pay their share. So like that big project Samantha was talking about, we don't typically get projects that big, but their capital facilities charge was a couple $100,000. So and that goes directly into swim capital. We are always looking for grants to help support programs. And so some of our projects might get debt funded, so loan reimbursements, you'll see there, we're coming, getting money in from that. And various utility reimbursements. And then on the general fund side, again, Rob already kind of went over this. This is just, again, showing those numbers from those new taxes that we enacted. And then one more that's really important that does kind of impact your world is that as a utility, the city has the right to tax the stormwater utility, just like it would with sewer, water. And so there's a 6% tax applied to swim fees. That's in this biennium, that's bringing in about $253,000. And again, so that's just revenue directly to the general fund. And last, just to kind of summarize these impacts, swim is your friend. We have about a 2% hit on the general fund, but we give back about 5% of the general fund's revenue. And that just kind of recaps everything we just went over. So that is it. Happy to answer any questions.
For the grants, is that a centralized thing for the city, or is each different division just kind of getting grants on their own?
Yeah, I mean, these are grants just specific for surface water projects, you know, as grants come and go, we're always trying to kind of keep our fingers on the pulse of what's out there and what we're eligible for, particularly for capital projects. And actually, it's not really in this budget, but in the upcoming budgets with the new capital program we adopted, we really are relying on grants to fund those projects. So we're really looking hard to make sure that we're not missing any opportunities to help with those. So, and then we actually have a consultant helping us just, all he's doing is helping us find and manage these grants.
And there's lots, sorry, someone maybe lifted the hand. There's lots of streams in Kenmore, including in private properties. Is there an opportunity to, not necessarily that we should, but to derive revenue through because of the work required to maintain the quality of those streams as they dump into just more general streams that aren't on private property?
Not sure I fully understand what you mean, but I mean, but the fees that we collect, so that surface water fee, I don't know if this answers your question, but I mean, that would be, managing streams and, a lot of the projects we do, it's not just specific to a stormwater utility, whether something's public or private.
Yeah, but there's no variation tied to this property is X number of square feet, but it also happens to have a stream, which therefore counts for more of the stormwater than the average property, which might not have a stream associated.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, no, we don't really, look at it through that lens. It's more kind of look through the lens of, first we start with what's all in the public interest. So the right of way, the parks, the public amenities that we have. So we're collecting fees to maintain that really for the benefit of everyone. And then, on the private side of things, usually our involvement more is for just like inspections and compliance, and responding to issues that the private property owner would be on the hook for maintaining. So a lot of times on those private property, those facilities, for instance, so we have all those private facilities, so we go and inspect them, which does incur a charge to us, but they're required to do all the maintenance and work. So we give them kind of a correction list of what they are required to do, and that's on their dime.
Okay.
So yeah, they wouldn't have to pay more, because they're already kind of on the hook for maintaining what they're responsible for on private property.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Sure.
So all the property that the city's buying up, like up and down 73rd, is that pretty much out of the surface water management fund then?
Yeah, and kind of back to grants, so, I'm pretty much, every single one of those properties, I think, have been obtained through different types of conservation grants, which will usually cover half up to 75%, of the cost of those. And then, we can just kind of, like a lot of those on 73rd, it's almost cheaper and easier just to kind of remove the issue and restore that back to kind of what it's trying to do, which is be a floodplain, rather than, we talk about service request and dealing. I mean, I've spent so much time having to, respond to issues and try and figure things out just on all those 73rd properties. And, we finally reached a point where it's like, the only thing we can really do for you is if you want to like coordinate, we can see if we can find some grant money and just, buy the property and remove the issue from where.
Yeah.
Take the house away.
So many times.
Yeah, you can try raising your house, but then how you gonna row a boat to it? Yeah, so it's tough.
We have done that.
Yeah.
Good. Thanks, everybody. You.
I gave you 2.5 minutes back.
You did. Good job.
City manager's office?
Yep.
Okay, so the department head from the city manager's office is actually Stephanie Lukash, the deputy city manager. She really wanted to be here tonight, but she's repping the city tonight. She's representing the city at the Association of Washington Cities Legislative Action Days. Yeah. She's the president. This doesn't count towards my 10 minutes. She is the president of the Washington City Managers Association. And so she had a board meeting down there for that. Plus, because she's the president of WCMA, she's also on the Association of Washington Cities Board of Directors. So they had a board meeting. Plus the working with state legislatures and meeting with agencies and stuff down there. She was doing that for city of Kenmore this week, including tonight. So she really wanted to be here. She will come to another meeting. You'll get to know her. She's fabulous. Okay, here we go. All right, this is the city. I'll take control. All right, so here's the city manager's office. And Stephanie's on that far right, and you can see the organizational chart. There on the left, we see Nancy Meehan, executive assistant. You see two receptionists. They're actually two half-time receptionists, and that works out really well because they can cover each other. Like one can work a full day and one needs to take the day off. And so that those two half-time receptionists work really well together. But I'll go into the functions in the next slide. So we have citywide, what I call R&D, cover economic development and also community engagement, and all the communications for the citywide issues come out of the city and manager's office. We also have diversity, equity, and inclusion, and that's a newer program in the last couple of years. We have housing and human services, which we just added last year. And Tandy, do you want to say anything on housing and human services?
Can answer any question.
And then we hired 2 employees to run the ARPA programs. Remember that 6.4 million we got from the pandemic? Those are the 2 employees, and their terms expire at the end of this year. We also have the city clerk's office, and what I call the stewards of democracy. Stewards of democracy. They run all the council meetings as far as agendas and minutes and that sort of thing. We also have a public records specialist, and they handle hundreds of public records every year. And I already mentioned reception desk. Organizational health, that's something that it's a top concern for us. And then public safety. So one of Stephanie's jobs is to manage all things public safety. So she manages the police contract. She works directly with Brandon. She manages court, jail, racer, and prosecutor, and defender, and all those things. So she manages all those contracts pretty much single-handedly. And then this is our 2-year budget. And our expenditures. And we get a little bit of revenue from a Port of Seattle grant to help us with economic development. And that's it. Oh, yeah. I'm setting the example.
You were talking about the hundreds of public records requests, so do the amount that we like charge for those, is that equivalent like to what, I mean, could we charge more?
We can't, and so we charge like per page if they want hard copies. In this day and age, it's electronic and they get pretty close to free, I think. Yeah. So there's pretty much zilch revenue that comes from public records.
We can't charge more.
No, and we're limited on, like, we wanted to charge per page if they want hard copies. We can't charge an exorbitant fee. It has to be the cost of providing the copy.
And assuming that everything is electronic, are there opportunities, and do you know if there's interest for neighboring cities to mutualize public records requests to have one person spread across, or a certain number of people spread across multiple cities to address public records for all of the cities?
I think that'd be really challenging. So Teresa McAllister does that for us, and it's about 2/3 of her time. The other third of her time is administrative support to Stephanie. But cities, manage their records differently, and so I think it would be hard to have one come over and.
Is there a way to preemptively? I don't know the nature of most of these requests, but is there, I know that Kenmore posts a lot of records on the website. Is there more stuff that could just be generally available on the website that would basically, if somebody sends a public records request, it's available online? Just a quick, yeah.
Yeah, I think we've tried to do that, but we could probably do more of that, where we're proactively putting more things on the website and then just pointing people to those things. One thing we've talked about is, and I don't know, anybody here can answer. One thing we've talked about is all the public records requests that we've gotten, just put those on the website. So, because sometimes we get repeat requests and say, well, we remember getting that request back 3 years ago or a year ago. We can just point the person to that record. So that's one thing we've talked about, is putting all of our records requests on our website. We haven't done that.
So that just, is that a more automated process through like the city's website where they can go on and request them, or is that like we have to maintain all the records of those requests?
I don't know.
It's an online form.
Yeah.
It's not anything real automated. It's just a.
I see more questions. Yeah.
I will say the more data-driven requests have been streamlined as we've improved our GIS, so a lot of requests used to be for like, can I get like what's downstream of this, or what's in this area of utilities, and a lot of that's available much easier online.
It's also improved over the years with the email, because they do more of a centralized search as opposed to like individual staff having to like go through the email. So now it's just like, it's more like a centralized, IT does the search on certain requests instead of a bunch of individual staff having to work on it.
So that would be our contractor that does the IT work.
I'll tell you one thing that does drive private records requests or public records requests, and that is how what's the word? How progressive the city how progressive the city council wants to be in its initiatives. So like city council has been kind of leading the way in the area of housing. Like the city has taken more of a let's take matters into our own hands role when it comes to housing. So tenant protections, things like that. And whenever the city council goes into more controversial issues, public records go up. They go up a lot. Also, if we do things if we adopt policies that get appealed, then public records go up. So we're getting 2 housing policies right now that are being appealed in the courts. One is for the protection of mobile home parks, and the other one is tenant protections. Those are being appealed, and those caused a lot of public records requests. So if councils just want to like stay under the radar and not be super progressive, then that'll save us on public records requests. All right.
Good job, wow. I'm next. So, if you read the email I sent, I think all of you did. One of the things I alluded to, and thank you, people for having, thanks. One of the things I alluded to was, that we had a change in our 6-year forecast. So I know some of you probably like paper and some of you don't, but I have paper. So if you like it, I'm providing it, and I will also put this out electronically, but I was waiting once we found the error And then it's like, well, I'm not gonna put it out until we talk about it, and so I have mine, so if you wanna take one. That's
They didn't tell us the lines never cross.
Right.
Cool.
So. What I'm handing you is the revision, and here, you can take one of these and you can, I'm sorry. And so the standalone paper, the graph that you'll get is, and I guess it's right on it, is I see there. what you saw preview. So the one graph that's coming out by itself is what you saw. Previously. That's, yeah, okay. The package is the new revision, and I will take update in the corner, in red. Oh, good lord. And as of today, the, on our site in the agenda from the first meeting, which is when I went over this stuff, it still has. Oh, that's fine. Yeah, there's an extra one. Yep. On the agenda from the first meeting is, there's probably more people, yeah, that think of that. There's still the old version that's out there that was a part of the agenda. So if you want to take a look at the old one, it's there. The only thing
Thanks.
that changed, so one number changed, which of course affected a whole bunch of numbers. And so if you look on the legal paper, if you want to know what happened, this is the legal one, the second from the last piece of paper. You look at the 2021 actual column and you go down to ending fund balance. That number should be 2410148. Everybody see that? Well, it was hard coded with an additional 2.3 million. So it was hard coded to 471013. And when I came here in 23, and so I started updating from 22 forward, and I didn't check the formulas in the earlier columns because I thought it was a calculation. So, and it should have been, but it wasn't. So it was just that one number, which of course creates a $2.3 million problem because it was higher. The wrong number was higher than what the actual number should have been. So on all these numbers, that was the only one that changed, but of course it flows through as part of the fund balance. But none of the detailed numbers embedded in there change. It's really just rolling forward as a fund balance number going forward. So the same thing on this page, on the big page, the only thing that changes are the numbers at the very top, because it says beginning fund balance. And so that's where it starts to change, and the red shows up sooner than it did before. But again, all the details of the other numbers are all the same.
You know what caused us to catch this? You guys.
Yeah.
So we were showing you this. And one of you, it might have been Nafe, that said, why did the fund balance go up in 2022? And I went, oh, yeah, no, that shouldn't have happened because we bought the Holt property in 2022 with $2.2 million of general fund. Holt property being 3 doors down.
Yeah.
It was 3.2 million total, but 2.2 of that was purchased with general fund money. And I was like, oh yeah, whoever, I think it might have been Nafe, but whoever pointed out, I was like, Linda, check this out. And so Linda was like, oh yeah, and so she went and checked, and that's when she found a hard code problem from 2021.
Yep, 2021.
Yeah, which, so, it's a $2.2 million problem, and it's because we bought the whole property. So this is the old, like Linda said, and now this is the new, and you see the difference, it's uglier.
Yeah.
But I've got some sort of good news, silver lining good news. So we got $6.4 million in ARPA, right? And 3.2 of it was allocated towards the Shell property, the Plymouth property. That's project's not happening now. So there's $3.2 million of ARPA that hasn't been assigned yet. One thing we're exploring, keyword exploring, I haven't talked to the council about this yet,
But one idea is to take 2.2 million of the 3.2 that was allocated to Plymouth and use it to reimburse the general fund for purchasing Plymouth property.
Hold.
Oh, thank you, you're listening. And then that would get us back to this. So, and it would be used for the same purpose, right? It would be used for affordable housing.
Yeah. Yep.
So you guys don't have to react to that right now, but that's one idea to get us back to this better graph.
Does. Do you do like a reconciliation? Because a balance is a balance, right? Like you can usually add up your cash and assets and get to a number. And then compare it to your model and say, are these in the same ballpark? So do you do any kind of reconciliation of your balance sheet? And
I mean, yeah, this, so the numbers, again, I didn't check all the way back to 2021. So all the numbers that it's like, oh yeah, these are all exactly what I'm seeing in our books. So it really was just bringing forward that fund balance. And I'm just trying to think of when I look, I'd have to go back to the reports that I used as far as seeing that top number. You know?
yeah, I guess, and this is just where I'm trying to understand, like, and reconcile the way that I generally understand accounting systems and things like that with how the city has to do it. Is, like when I'm preparing financial statements, I have my like Excel model, but there's an accounting system with GLs and journal entries and stuff like that. And when you do a trial balance to say all the debits and credits add up to this much. And then there's sort of a like, okay, that balances, add up all my assets, added up all my liabilities, and that's my net balance. And how does that compare to the model? So I guess like, is the accounting system audited and then like has some kind of function where you can reconcile that and then compare that to what this is, or is this sort of?
The accounting system is not audited, our reports are audited.
Right.
Yeah, so, yeah, I'm just curious now to go back and look at if there's different reports that are run. So I'm guessing that the reports I used, it didn't show like, oh, here's your beginning fund balance, here's your ending. It's just putting in the numbers and then the calculation happens. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so then you're relying on your starting point.
Got it.
Yeah.
So I guess maybe the question I'm actually asking is there an audited fund balance that we can anchor to and feel comfortable that there aren't any other gremlins, or is that audit not completed yet for the most recent period?
I'll take a look. At what, yeah, I need to take a look, because there's all different ways that we're looking at this with all the different funds and whatnot, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're making sense. So take the report of what actually happened, the financial report that showed what actually happened, and tie it to this forecast.
Yep.
Yeah, and believe me, I am no stranger to the fact that you have like internal ways of looking at numbers, because it's more useful than the way that the audit requires you to report those numbers.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it can take some finagling to get there, but I, just
That's a good check. I should be able to do that. Yeah, I just need to get the right report.
as someone who has found $2 million+ errors in my models that have caused these kinds of problems, don't take this as an indictment, but as like whatever we can do to help, like make sure that we're starting from a place that we're confident in.
Are there ideas with regards to that remaining 1 million from the shell property that is not the 2.2 for the whole one?
Not yet. Okay. I mean, I have some ideas, but I want to talk to the council and the staff and the community about it. Yeah. Plus, in addition, there's several $100,000 ARPA that was never allocated
So there's that too, that we need to have a conversation about it.
So I will, just a second, so I will verify the numbers and I'm hoping that's an easy thing. I mean, it literally should be. The starting point. And as soon as I get that done, I will put this out in that share. Have you been able to get to the shared?
Yeah,
folder? Okay,
yeah.
I'll put it on the shared folder and, you guys can, those of you that are really interested in digging into spreadsheets can have fun with that. Sorry, yeah.
No, I was just gonna follow up and say, what is like plan B? Is that what we're here to help determine? What if they do not agree to that? If you go to the council and they say, no, that's not how we want to use that.
Taking the 2.2 and correcting it in.
Correct.
Yeah. That's good.
Then it's a bigger problem we have to solve. Yeah,
It's the same problem, just more so.
sorry.
It's the same problem, it's just more so.
And more urgent.
More urgent, right? Because now it's 3 years.
Yeah.
Accelerate, okay.
The trajectory is exactly the same. It's
It
just,
should get shorter, yeah, it's 3 years.
Exactly.
Exactly, yeah, 2029.
that'll buy us some time. One of the things that we found when we were considering different options for how to solve this problem is you have some things that you can enact very quickly and some things that take multiple years, some of which we've been talking about, in these meetings. It's like, oh yeah, that's what we said was gonna take 2 years, 4 years ago. So, yeah, that kind of timing can really give us more options.
Mhm. Other questions on the new forecast?
So your last one, when might you know the answer?
That 3.2 million.
Correct.
We'll probably have that conversation in this first part of March with the council, I guess.
I had a feeling about just the budget stuff in general. Are we charging any kind of sales tax or lodging tax tourism for, like hotels?
No,
'Cause I think Wagon Wheel and Kenmore Inn are no longer hotels, right? But I think all that's left now is the lodge.
Lodge, the hotel.
that's the Kenmore that isn't anymore.
I thought they had switched over to being apartments.
Oh, I heard that was going to happen. I don't know if it actually did, but
I
I'm
just,
not up on everything.
I
Yeah.
can confirm it.
Here we go.
Oh, okay. All right, that answers it then. Yeah, so that might be when you get into solutions and stuff, but and so we do not charge a lodging tax or tourism tax or whatever you want to call it. Here's the deal. If we were to charge a lodging tax on the lodge, guess what? It would not be an increase in the tax. What? How is that possible? The way it works is we would just capture the county's share. So the county is already charging lodging tax on the lodge. So if we charge the lodging tax, we would just get the county's share. And we'd be able to spend it locally. And, but a lodging tax would not necessarily help us with our situation. Because by state law, you have to spend lodging tax on promoting more overnight stays. Or what they call heads in beds. And so we'd have to like spend it on advertising and things like that to get people to come and visit Kenmore. Now, you could charge some of it to Lauren's time because she does a lot to promote the city. We have folks that do the concerts in the park and the movies. We could charge some lodging tax, we could pay for them a little bit with lodging tax. So it could help the general fund a little bit, but not 100%. One last thing on lodging taxes, and I had to get to know this really well in my last city. Gig Harbor was a tourism city.
Yeah.
And by state law, if you have a lodging tax, you also have to set up a lodging tax advisory committee. And it has to be people who represent the tourism industries, and you can have a couple residents, and it has to be chaired by a city council member. So you have to set up a lodging tax advisory committee, and you cannot spend any of that lodging tax without running it through that committee. And if they're all hoteliers, they're gonna think it's their money. Cause I know.
So we can promote beer row.
Yeah, you can promote Brew Row, you can promote, Kenmore Air, yeah.
So
And,
King County is actually charging a lodging tax on it now and then.
yeah, and then that goes to King County Tourism. But, we think it's, yeah, we think it's in the neighborhood of what, how much?
In 22, the law.
Yeah.
Dollars in lodging tax that went to King County.
They had a better year in 2023, and we're gonna get that number soon. So it is something we're thinking about, because just strategically, right, like capturing getting that money out of the county and spending it locally.
Mhm.
Yes, please.
Well, yeah, I mean,
If the tax doesn't go up, that's.
right, but so there's no, we couldn't call it sales tax, it would have to be a lodging tax.
It's just logistics.
That's right.
You can also capture it on Airbnb rentals, which is a little bit more complicated, but that's another opportunity to explore. I'm excited.
You all know Lauren?
Yeah.
She's our communication specialist in the city manager's office.
Yeah, happy to be here. I'm Lauren Tonia, communication specialist for the city. So definitely here to support the work you guys are doing. I just, yeah, I've been supporting, we continue to support. We're just wrapping up our next quarterly newsletter and the FSP is right on the front page. So you guys have a really nice article in there that also talks about the town hall and upcoming community engagement activities. Excited. So. I sent you my login info, right?
Yeah, do you need it?
I should be it. There we go. Okay, so Engagement HQ is a kind of community engagement platform. It's different than a traditional website where, you know, a traditional website is kind of a one-way dialogue. It's us telling the community what we want them to know. Engagement HQ has a lot of tools that provide a more interactive experience for the user. Let me just pull up our draft project here and kind of walk you through it.
And we're now at the 3-hour mark.
I'll be quick.
How you guys doing? Because
Because I'll pay attention, but yeah,
after she.
at the end of it.
There's one more thing I was hoping we could talk about, and that's the statistically valid survey results. It's gonna be presented to the council this Monday night, but there's 2 or 3 questions I thought would be worth highlighting for you. Okay, go
Yeah,
ahead.
I only need a few minutes here. So again, we have the Speak Up Kenmore website. We're just launching it. And the long-term goal for it would be we'd have all these projects on a homepage. Any surveys that we're doing, any community engagement, people could go to Speak Up Kenmore and see all their opportunities to provide feedback. So we've done it for some of our city projects like 61st Avenue and stuff, but this will be our first time doing it for the financial sustainability plan. So we're planning on launching this. I want you guys to review it. And if you have any comments or feedback, we'll collect that this week. And then we'd like to launch this page publicly about the end of the week. Again, as a place for people to come for all the information on FSP, to ask questions, to have discussions or to share their ideas. And then once we kind of get people interested in the page, then this page will be the home for the balancing act tool, which will be the online survey where people can prioritize how they want revenue spent. So that survey will also live on this page and we plan on launching that at the beginning of March. So we'll kind of do a soft launch the next few weeks to get people educated and interested in the page, and then do a really hard launch and promote a lot once we have that balancing act tool and when we're actually asking somebody to complete an activity. So we just have an overview of the FSP, what's the problem? We have a really nice photo of Melinda saying we're a friendly staff, we're here to listen to you. And again, the expectation is that if someone asks a question, a staff member is responding right away, and you can see the conversation online. So instead of it being like a private question that's asked in an email, you see the question posted and you see the response right below, and then you can comment on it. So I also have your wonderful information for as community members. You can link to all the documents we want to link to. I have all the meeting dates, and if you click on them, you'll see the actual description of what's happening, and then we'll be adding the minutes to each of these links. So people can see that there.
On the recording.
And the recordings. Yep, we can do videos there too.
And supported documents.
Yep, exactly. And the idea is that, like, as long as the community engagement piece of this is open, this will be the main page we're sending folks to. Like, we want everyone to come here as for the FSP hub. But for the future, long term, our city website for the FSP will stay up to date long beyond when we're doing the engagement. So I'm going to just walk you through a couple tools that we have. So we have quick polls, which is a way to just ask someone really quickly what they're thinking about a certain topic. So we just put one up here as an example of what your favorite city event is. I think I was the only one that answered that birthday celebration event, but after you answer a question, you can see the results that everybody else has put in. And then there's an ideas tool, which is kind of like virtual post-it notes. So if people just want to say, I think you should do this, or I think this is a great idea, or please don't do this, someone can post a little post-it note idea. We have a questions tool, which again, like I said, allows someone to ask a question and then we respond live on the website. So you can see the answers and people can see all the questions that have been asked. The community discussions tool is kind of like a community forum. So if somebody's like, I want to talk about lodging tax, then we say, here's some information on the lodging tax. Let's start a discussion, and someone can comment. They can like it. They can comment back. The city can respond. A community member can respond. So it's kind of this online dialogue that, again, is really transparent. And makes it feel like more of a community discussion. So you guys can decide, we can start those discussions if there's specific topics, but then they'll also be user generated if people want to provide their own discussion topics.
Can I ask a question on
Yes.
Is there going to be moderation?
Yes, so.
And what is the policy for moderation? I've been on camera.
Yeah, so part of the nice part about this product is it is moderated 24/7 for profanity, and we can kind of decide the terms for that, and it's done without us having to look at it. But then every question, every comment that comes in comes to Melinda, myself, and Brian Randall. So we have the opportunity to look at it again with these questions. Like, you can see a question and decide to post it publicly, before. There's also, you can choose the level of participant verification. So some tools like require someone to register and provide a verified email. Other tools like the quick poll don't require any of that. It's like a low barrier, trying to get as many people as possible to respond. So again, you kind of have the option of choosing.
Can we have some ground rules, like what if somebody says the city manager is a pompous jerk? Can they put that on there, or do we have some rules about, hey, don't attack people, attack the issue?
Yeah, I'll have to look specifically at what Engagement HQ uses their ground rules, but then we have the opportunity to put our own ground rules on there from the comments. And yes, go ahead.
So like if somebody submits a comment or a question, they won't see it immediately. It goes to you all and then you hit them and then it goes in.
Yes.
Yeah.
So nothing gets posted without you looking and pressing a.
People can, if they're submitting questions or forum discussions, it requires us to do it. If someone is commenting, I don't have to check their comment first. It's verified through Engagement HQ first.
Okay. I mean, I'm a big fan of this type of engagement, and Wikipedia is the new encyclopedia for a reason, and it's because it's community generated. But I'm concerned when we have technical issues like finances, budgets, taxes, laws and things like that, misinformation can just run away. And suddenly your community engagement and questions suddenly becomes a vector for misinformation and a vector for causing panic or concerns among the community that wasn't there before. And so I don't know what the answer to that is, but it's a huge concern of mine,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to these kinds of technical issues.
Yes, I see it as a balance. And like I said, we have the option where we don't feel comfortable or we don't want to provide that level of open engagement. They call it an open environment when it's completely like what's posted is there besides profanity and those other ground rules. So we can choose to use tools that are more locked down. But again, the whole point of this tool is to provide that space that feels more like a community space. And what's been really hard for me is the misinformation on Kenmore neighbors and not having a space to respond.
Yeah.
And for people to see a response from the city right away. So I think we want to be careful, but I also want to try out some of these tools in a more open environment and see if we have the ability to control the narrative and provide responses. So again, I'm open to how you guys want this page to look, but I'm sharing what our opportunities are.
Is this the first of its kind as far as trying to get people engaged for City of Kenmore, as far as the template and the way it's presented currently?
So we've done ideas and surveys before. I have never done a project on here yet that has the community discussion
Yeah,
and the questions,
and are the metrics available through Google Metrics or is that just internal?
both.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, this site has really great metrics, but it's also connected to Google Analytics.
And on the discussions, I would encourage you guys to dive in and participate in the discussions. And you can help us answer questions or provide your perspective. And you don't have to worry about quorum issues. This group is not subject to the Open Public Meetings Act because you're advising me and then I take your advice and take whatever recommendation I do to the council. So you don't have to worry about quorum issues or having a discussion if you were a OPMA body.
Yeah, I would love if by the time we launch this, we have a few questions from this group and a few ideas posted. So when people show up to the site, it already looks engaging and like people are interested in one of the discussion.
Or the translation service on this, like, the Kindle website.
I can add that. Yes, so you're talking about the accessibility button? Yes, I can add that to this site. That's a great suggestion.
So a clarifying question, if we were to respond within the comments or within a conversation, is that not similar to what we decided we wouldn't do, which is individually respond to emails because we don't all share the same information, understanding, or point of view, and yet we're representative of something for the city?
Yeah.
What's different between not responding from email and everything going through Melinda versus this?
I think what we'd be responding with is facts that we've learned from sitting here. That maybe not everybody in the public can listen to.
Maybe the difference is this is like an open conversation that we want to encourage and everybody can see.
Yeah.
I guess my thought is, if we're going out with a lot of, and maybe I don't understand it correctly, but the same information you've just given us. Right, with a lot of the data and a lot of the information, and they don't have the context that we're getting. I know if I was just going online and reading it without all this context, I would have so many questions. And I just think that you're gonna spend a lot of time saying the same thing over and over just to educate people and get them halfway to where we are now. And that these forums have really helped me just understand how the city works.
Yeah, and that's.
I don't
a
think
good
the average
suggestion.
person even knows.
We could have there's an FAQ widget on here too, so maybe we want to think about like the top questions.
Or
that you
maybe
think-
first direct them to the FAQs
Exactly.
and no comments, yeah. I mean,
Well, exactly, that's what I'm saying, right on
until
the
they
page.
learn how to read,
Yes.
but that would, you know.
We would have the opportunity to like, right under Melinda, you could have a FAQ widget
Yeah,
right
Yeah.
here that
to
has.
really help them first, because.
Yeah, and I think, I think this would work, but I think, so as we're answering questions, it's almost make sure like, right, okay, this is what I understand your question would be, this is what I'm answering. But then also, as we're writing these things, and continue to encourage them to come to the open townhouse so it can be done verbally and then
Yeah.
that would be an easier form to answer some of the more complicated.
Yeah.
So a couple of thoughts I'm having is there may be ground rules for this team and how we respond to.
Yeah.
Because boy, could we set people off. Seriously, you know, even just listening at this table for 3 sessions and hearing the kinds of questions and statements that are coming out of us, you know, 50 to 80% of the time, I'm like, oh, I don't agree with that. So we can't represent each other. We represent our own voice and our own opinion. And I'm wondering if there's things that we can remember as we're responding in this environment that aren't stultifying to us being in a genuine conversation, but that also don't put us in a position of expertise or groupthink where we assume an authority over the topic, because we're just other community members that are helping in a slightly elevated capacity to all of these people and their thoughts and opinions. So I wonder if there's just some talking points for us around how we engage so that we can all sort of stay within both a kindness, but a non-expert and helpful coordinating conversation role.
I have a thought. So if you want to respond, but you're not 100% certain, or you like just say, here's my recollection, or here's where the conversations, I'm tagging Melinda. I don't know if you can like somehow prompt, but anyway,
Yeah.
you know, she can, you know, I want her to weigh in on this, if what I'm saying is accurate or whatever, or just make sure that we're seeing that you're responding, but you want to make sure there's confirmation about what you're saying.
Right, and then we don't get into arguments with people and
Yeah.
we don't press our point when they have a strong opinion. You know, there's just some protocols, some decorum that I think could be meaningful for us to all just think about together.
Yeah. And it might be if it's heading in a certain direction to also say, you know, you may want to email Melinda directly. You know?
Yeah, just the soft and hard handoffs to you.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, just simple. It's
Yeah.
just a question to email Melinda directly.
Yeah, and de-escalation techniques they're very easy and they really work. Recognizing someone's position, recognizing the energy that's behind their remarks, you know, sympathizing with their position without agreeing with it. There's just little things that are very, very easy to do in these types of environments.
And if you're not comfortable, just let them know.
Don't do it.
Yeah.
Well, then,
When in
also
doubt, don't.
emailing you to say, hey,
Yeah.
can you look at this one?
Yes.
'Cause- Yeah.
And do not hesitate to email me directly, whatever, and say, hey, something's going on, you probably want to check it out, you know? Yeah.
Yes, so lastly, I just wanted to point out that when the balancing act tool is up and running, it would be under this survey tab, and Engagement HQ is actually a partner with Balancing Act, so their software integrates really well. This program I can't show you yet since it's not up and running, but it'll look really nice
Did you remember,
on this
do
page.
you all remember, or did we tell you about balancing act?
You mentioned it.
In the
earlier.
first
Yeah.
session,
Mhm.
first meeting.
Yeah, it's a way for people to do a budget simulation, submit their own budget for the city.
So I think that'll be the main tool of this website. I mean, it's an information hub, but it's a way for us to gather feedback. So depending on how much community input you guys are looking for, that I think would determine what tools you want to use and how robust we want the conversations to be on this page versus, you know, information.
Your Q&A, I think, is an excellent idea. Putting up some information for people to hold and respond from.
Yeah.
And you make it very clear that we're working with what the general fund, street fund, like, so all of, any of the other issues they might have, like, it's not a part of it.
Property tax increase limitations, we're not raising your property taxes 5% every year, it's 1%. That kind of stuff.
If there's.
Well, yeah, that's a good point. A kind of key goal of a Q&A is to address people's fears more than anything, right? So identifying what their fears are and being able to speak to it right away would be great.
Well, if you guys have suggestions on questions, I think we'd have to.
Property
figure out
taxes,
The first ones that come to
that's
your
number
mind.
one. Yeah.
I think more generally also, be it in the Q&A or in the ground rules of the Balancing Act tool, is what are the caps that, sure, you might want to increase property taxes by 50% to balance the budget, but just legally it's not possible.
The constraints.
Yeah,
right there, yeah.
the hard limits of, this is where we're at, well, this is where we're at in the tool, but whatever you decide, you're not allowed to go higher than this amount on this topic.
Sometimes can't the tool itself, you can build that into the tool, like you can't type in a number greater than this or.
Yeah, but I would not only make sure that
Another
the
way.
tool has that, but it also in
Oh,
the
definitely.
ground rules up front of
Written.
know that you won't be able to in the tool and in real life.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, if I could task you guys, because you're a task force.
It's late on.
No, try to come up with one or two or three, Q&As, that we should include.
Yeah, think of what's coming.
Yeah, think of what you've learned, what was maybe an aha moment, just like, wow, people need to understand this, we can put in there.
We should look at the feedback from the last balancing act. The questions and comments from the previous balancing act. Because a lot of the comments, I actually went back and looked through the comments from last time. And there was a ton of repeat comments of people that were just taking the opportunity to say the things that they want to say and the questions that they just want to ask. Just broadly, their opinions on taxes in general, or that the city should fire X% of its staff or whatever. And so just like maybe going through those as
Yeah.
kind of a preliminary expectation.
Mhm. Melinda, what deadline do you want for our questions to come to you so that you guys can move forward? How much time do you want to give us for that?
On Monday? Yeah.
Okay.
And then the ground rules, you said that we could potentially put in our own ground rules.
Yes.
Is that similar timing, Monday?
Yeah.
Yeah, Monday would be great.
Oh, okay, two things then. So questions and then ground rules we'd like to see.
Then I'm thinking this could be up and running in about a week. It's been a couple days after we get your feedback.
Is there a way to like have visitors require them to view the ground rules or agree to the ground rules before
So again,
participating?
that's up to us. We can have a more like you can choose with those tools where people would have to register, provide a verified email address, and then you can choose that they, agree to the terms of the website. But that just really decreases the number of people that will actually take the survey or.
Yeah, I think low barrier is better because sometimes the naysayers have the most important points in a way and they'll back out if it's too hard to get in.
Not the registration barrier, but like, okay, I'm gonna click the button to comment. Here are the ground rules before you write out your comment. Is there a way to do that?
Yeah.
So I'll find out.
Okay.
Yeah, there's just a simple.
I don't necessarily want people.
It's like
to
the
have to
remember be
register.
nice kind of
Yeah,
thing.
just like a reminder that before you start typing out your
Facebook has
angry
that.
comment, that there's a person on the other
And
side.
if it doesn't have a pop-up, I mean, we can definitely put it
Yeah.
on the main page,
Yeah.
on the survey page, on the discussion page as like a little sidebar.
Are we trying to solve a problem that doesn't exist? I mean, no, it's a real question. I think we care about it, but is it a problem to just leave it open and just wade through the nasties
And
and?
we can change it too, I mean.
Yeah, we can change it throughout, right? If it's not going well, and we're like, we need to lock this down, we can, but I guess there's part of me just with all the conversations on Kenmore Neighbors, I kind of want to open it up and see what happens and let staff respond and let us discuss things and not,
I agree.
so
Yeah.
it's a little bit of a trial run with some of these tools and like Linda said, we can change it as we go. But I do think it's an opportunity.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, because
Mhm.
our policy is we don't get involved. It's a private site, it's a vortex. And so we're actually looking forward to this platform.
And having people ask a hard question or uncomfortable question and like being able to respond and people see that dialogue, so
More than a pop-up.
hopeful.
Yeah.
More than a pop-up, I think just thinking about the story flow of we want people, first thing they see would be the rules, et cetera, not in a, hey, you're not allowed to move forward until you've seen that, but really encouraging them, find a way to encourage them of, this is what you really need to know. I feel when I hear pop-up, I immediately think EULA, and terms of service, the stuff that you scroll down and sure, I read it. And then afterwards, the problem with the pop-up is when you think, wait, that information I actually needed, the pop-up doesn't allow you quick easily to where do I find it kind of thing. So the And user agreements of, yeah, sure, I've seen that part. That's what I think when I think pop up.
I'm just trying to think of a way to set the tone.
No, for sure.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
I want that too. It just was a trigger of, people will, a pop-up, they'll click, yeah, and then afterwards they won't know where to get it.
Yeah.
Because they've clicked it out and it only shows up as a pop-up.
Right, well, that's what I was like, the low barrier is great, even if it's something as simple, as I know, we used to have those little, things that you put in your car window that said, like, what kindness is contagious in Kim, or whatever that was.
Courtesy.
Courtesy, yeah, that was it, so, even if it's just like maybe a little image.
Oh,
Hank-
yeah.
Hank the Heron sitting there,
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
With
saying
a-
something like that.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
And maybe have a visual of step, in the site, guided was step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, and step 4 is actually the plan your own budget. But step 1 encourages you of learn about the departments and learn about the revenues and costs, et cetera. And then in the end, you go to step 4. If people want to jump straight to step 4, they can. But at least they were given a recommended path to, this is how you'll get the most out of your experience.
Quick question before we get to Rob, because I know he wants to show, but, so we're gonna have a town hall April third. And so we're trying to make sure we know what the hour, so April 3rd is a Wednesday, we can hold it the same time as the 6:30 to 8:30. Does that work for everyone? Is there a reason to do it maybe earlier or later, or?
it's going to the printer on Friday, getting mailed to everybody's mailbox, so we wanted to double check with you guys before we print the time of the town hall, but
That 6:30.
currently it's 6:30 to 8:30. Is what's on the agenda for that.
People have some beastly commutes that live here and it gives them time.
Oh, did we verify the change to March
March
14th?
14th.
From the
That's
13th?
March 14th instead of the 13th. Oh,
And
sorry.
I'll change my, okay.
I mean, you can miss, you're allowed to miss.
If they don't charge me, I don't mind.
Back to the town hall meeting. So be ready to interact with the public, right? You'll be, I don't know how we'll do it. Maybe we'll have tables or something, but you're there to hear from the public on what their questions or concerns are at that town hall meeting. So, yeah. All right, so, we had a research firm do a statistically valid survey of our residents. We asked a bunch of questions. And it was, the sample size was 300 residents. So to be statistically valid, they had to have a sample size of at least 300. And they happened to conduct this survey in the middle of December.
I got it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I got it.
Yeah, so it was in the middle of the most grumpiest time we've had in a while. Our residents were asked these questions. So even with that as context, it was pretty good. And I'm not gonna go through all these survey results, and Lauren's gonna give this presentation on Monday, but I just wanted to show you some things. Just really quick, residents, so this is a question about, is Kenmore headed in the right direction? And 69% say yes, but look at this, strongest ever,
Yeah.
25, wrong track was 25%, strongest ever. So the blue was typical of what we had in the past, but the red was definitely.
The detractors and who's.
Did they get to comment and break down why?
No,
Okay.
okay, and then, let's see. And then, this is us,
Oh, it compares.
yeah, this is, so EMC research does this for other cities too. And you can see how, look at this satisfaction and.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, quality of life, people, high marks on quality of life, it's 88%. Feel like it's good or excellent. This is an interesting one. So this was an open-ended question. People were not given choices. They just said, tell us what's on your mind. And that is, here's the question. It's, what is the most important issue the city needs to address in the next 2 years? Now, here's what's fascinating. See, traffic congestion is number 3. So this dark red is 2023. So our prior surveys, traffic congestion was always the number 1 top of mind issue. for the first time, it came down into the 3 spot. So affordable housing was number 1 this time. And more businesses and restaurants were number 2, so.
Actually, it's in the 4th spot,
Yeah, it's got 4th spot.
because it's not.
Infrastructure, tax policies, looks like
They,
that.
they flip those around.
Yeah,
Oh,
tax policies is that.
oh, yeah, you're right. Good eye. Yeah,
It was less
And
than.
there's another one as well that was ranked lower, but should have popped up higher.
Yeah, traffic should be, that, it should have knocked it off in that top 3.
It's not in the top 3.
So I'm curious how affordable housing is defined. Because there are, people mean different things by.
That's really interesting.
Does that mean middle housing? Does that mean real estate prices are through the chart up here, but I can afford a single family home if you bring them down a little bit? Does it mean coming out of homelessness? I'm very curious what that would.
so another thing is homelessness was its own
Its own thing.
category down here. But again, homelessness
As a function of,
can, yeah, and it can mean different people think. Somebody might say, there might be one person who will, on one end of the spectrum will say, I think homelessness is a problem and we need to find them all homes.
Mhm.
And the other person might say, homelessness is a problem and we make sure we've got to kick them all out of Kenmore.
Right.
So even that, you got to find out what people want.
Yeah.
And we did get the verbatim 300 responses for these. It was.
That'd be a qualitative
Very
data search of some
interesting to see
significance.
The affordable housing individual responses, like what people,
Really meant by that.
yes,
Was there a trend?
that it was all over the place. How close
It
we
meant
with those
something
results,
different to
but that-
everybody.
That's something different.
Interest.
Okay, I'll just. So this, I need to skip over this because we're out of time, but you guys can look at this at your leisure, but I just wanted to go to some things. So look at this, here's the overall financial health of the city. So last time we asked this was in 2019. So 51% think that it's excellent or good. So a little bit. Yeah, a little bit better than 2019. Satisfied with city services, you can see there. And then. Dang it, I wanted to find the tax dollars. Yeah,
There it is.
yeah,
Sellers responsible.
so this is interesting, so, if you go,
You passed it.
You had.
no, there's something else.
Yeah, it's right there.
Oh, yeah, look at this, delivering services efficiently. They think we're doing pretty good, but
Yeah.
when it comes to tax dollars responsibly, you suck. So I don't know what the disconnect is there.
Well, again, I don't think people really understand.
They like what you're doing, just do it for a lot less.
Yeah. You can use that.
Yeah, use somebody else's, don't use our money.
Use the budget appropriately. Could they even tell you what the budget is? No, could they even give you a
That's
big
for- We
picture?
were
of
even
it?
creating the engagement HQ table and we were asking, what services do you utilize of the city? And then we're thinking, I don't even know if people would be able to list off city services. Like,
Examples,
that's-
examples of services,
Right.
and then that helps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can we
look at the
budget
For this,
The more you do this, the more they'll get comfortable.
Absolutely.
And then, this one is that tax dollars used over
Yeah.
time, so it's been pretty steady.
Yeah.
But then, again, I'm keeping you guys too late, so I'm skipping over a whole bunch of
I want
things.
to hurry.
That'll be so fun to look in.
Doing what people want, because it's gonna
The
drive.
agenda for Monday's meeting, this is attached to.
Yeah,
Yes.
and then attitudes on how, look at this, 60% support missing middle housing, you wouldn't know that,
Support, I'm sorry, what? I didn't.
Missing middle.
missing middle housing. And then, okay, so here's one I want you to see is, we say, hey, we've been using photo enforcement in school zones. What do you think about that? And you got 59% say, yeah. We're okay with that. And then.
Then we got the ticket. No.
They pull us whole ticket all the time, up and down.
That should have been the next question. Did you?
Yeah.
get a ticket?
Yeah.
the strongly got 2.
Yeah, and then we asked, hey, we've been using school zone or photo enforcement money for road paving and traffic safety. would you be open to us using it to help pay for police services?
Mhm.
I know what they said.
Yeah.
What's your brother?
Sure, I was gonna say.
Yeah.
So, all right.
Do you have a breakdown of the survey demographic for past, past surveys?
We do, we'd have to dig for them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we should have it for 2019.
And it looked like some of the questions are kind of common questions that are asked to many cities, and some questions are custom to Kenmore.
Yeah.
Did EMC help you write those questions in a way that aren't leading or biased?
That's part of their job.
Yeah.
I assume, I just want
Do.
to make sure that yeah, okay.
But we are gonna do a second survey in a month or two. We're gonna follow up.
Yeah.
Like, for example, we're gonna say, okay, affordable housing, what do you mean by?
Yeah.
And so we'll ask some other questions like that. But, yeah.
So we hope to have the results of the second survey in time for your final deliberations.
Oh, yeah, well, thank you for that. So we'd like you to say, to give us questions that you would like us to ask in the second survey pertaining to your job, okay? But what questions, what FSP type questions would you like to see in this next thing?
I love your tool about the polarization.
So we've got three
Yes.
things that we can respond to. No, I'm just trying to, I love this stuff. I'm trying to encapsulate that. So we've got,
I think two ideas, first ideas, a question.
I would say we have
Yeah.
maybe next Friday, the end of the week, next week.
Ideas.
We have suggestions for survey questions.
ideas for a specific financially related
Yeah, next
survey.
meeting, thank you so much for staying late.
Okay.
Great questions once again.
Thanks for feeding us.
Survey questions.
Yeah, thanks for the.
Yes, yeah, next meeting. Great. Thanks, you guys. Nice to meet you. Thank you. Lauren.
Thank you.
Yes.
Because I'm giving a lecture in San Diego.
Will you watch it?
I'll be in the plane.
Will you watch the replay?
Okay.
I'll be in the plane when flying back. I land in.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't. Yes.
Definitely for you.
There we go.
Red is